Chapter 1418. The sudden shattering of the immortal sword came as a shock to everyone. One had to realize that immortal tools were all extremely sturdy, and even Tao integration stage super mighty figures would find it difficult to shatter them. As such, the fact that an immortal tool had been shattered so easily was quite a shock to everyone. Amidst their astonishment, they turned to look at Enlin. Enlin was the culprit behind the destruction of the immortal tool. Before anyone had a chance to do anything, a drastic turn of events unfolded. Gale force winds howled for over 3,000 kilometers. 99 tornadoes that connected heaven and earth appeared around Enlin, all of which roared like giant dragons as their bodies twisted and contorted, tearing apart everything in this world. The infernal Rakshasa had no intention of unleashing a spell technique on Enlin. It pounced toward Enlin, and its 8 weapon-wielding arms unleashed a series of monstrous crimson techniques to vanquish the several dozen tornadoes that were hurtling toward it. Roar! Die, die, die! The infernal Rakshasa swept through the tornadoes in its path as it closed in on Enlin. An expression of agony appeared on Enlin's face. He was suffering from a backlash from unleashing a spell technique. An immortal tool had been destroyed just like that, and the pain of the backlash was so excruciating that he felt like he was about to faint. Millions of spirit stones. The fragments of the great harmony immortal sword transformed into pristine white powder that fluttered in front of Enlin before transforming into a gust of wind that seemed to exist for eternity. The essence of the immortal tool had been completely unleashed. This was the power of wind that had been accumulated for countless years. Look out! Su Xiaolan let loose a cry of surprise. The infernal Rakshasa had already broken through all of the tornadoes and was already upon Enlin, upon which its massive, blood-stained saber came crashing down with the power to slice heaven and earth apart. Bam! When the saber fell upon Enlin, a black lotus flower blossomed in midair, keeping this earth-shattering attack at bay. Feng Weia had forged this immortal tool with his power of the divine Tao for 3,000 years, and he had finally unleashed all of that power, which transformed into a black lotus flower that protected Enlin. Wind rise. Enlin made a grabbing motion with one hand, and a sparkling white wind gathered in his hand like a sword. It stretched for 300 miles between heaven and earth. It was born from a place where the wind never stopped, and it would never be extinguished. Yin Luo, Enlin wielded the 300-ly wind sword and slashed at the mad Helajura in front of him. The wind carried with it the might to tear the heavens and earth apart as it descended mercilessly. The infernal Shura's battle instincts were still present, and it could sense the terrifying power in front of it. The 8 divine weapons on its arms immediately erupted with extremely powerful divine light as they slashed toward Enlin's wind sword in a frenzy. However, the wind sword in Enlin's hand seemed like it would never be extinguished. No matter how many times it was brutally attacked, it would never stop flowing. Roar! The infernal Rakshasa roared in despair. The 300-ly wind sword seemed to be threatening to slice the entire world in half as it descended upon its head, slicing open its skin and slicing open its skull, which was even harder than Xian steel. It was like a hot knife through butter, and its gargantuan body was instantly sliced in half. The infernal Rakshasa finally let loose a wail of anguish as its body plummeted toward the ground, from which blood gushed forth like a river. However, the life force of the blood tribe was extremely powerful. Its body that had been sliced in half began to squirm, and it was showing signs of healing again. However, the wind sword was relentless. It transformed into countless terrifyingly sharp wind blades that continued to slice through the infernal Rakshasa's body in a frenzy. All of the blood tribe cultivators in the immortal spirit paradise were stunned upon seeing this. Enlin had been on the back foot during his battle against Emperor Yi Deng, but now he was able to insta-kill Emperor Yi Deng with a single strike. Enlin's wind sword had completely exceeded their imaginations. This wasn't a sword technique of this world. What sword technique could only be unleashed by sacrificing an immortal sword to the heavens, slaying the infernal Rakshasa with a single sword strike. Is this the true power of the sacred ancestor they followed? Enlil rescued the 3 holy disciples from the blood tribe Holy Land. Doesn't that mean that even Emperor and Mang will be able to stop him? I really didn't think that Enlil would be able to turn the most sacred place in our blood tribe upside down. At this point, all of the blood tribe powerful beings had completely lost their will to fight. When he looked at Enlil, it was as if he had seen a war god who had descended from the heavens, standing proudly in the heavens. He was so mighty and invincible. Holy leader, all of the holy worshippers stared up at the man in the sky with scorching light in their eyes. Enlil glanced at the struggling, infernal Rakshasa on the ground, and his brows furrowed slightly. He discovered that the infernal Rakshasa's life force was still extremely vigorous. Is it really that hard to kill? Enlil heaved a forlorn sigh before turning to all of the blood tribe mighty figures at the immortal spirit paradise. All holy worshippers, listen up. Return to the 4-9 immortal sect with me. Yes, Lord's sacred ancestor. All of the holy disciples' eyes were burning with excitement. They knew what Enlil's words entailed. This meant that the holy leader had officially acknowledged them, and they were going to become members of the holy blood cult. Enlil wasn't a careless person. This battle at the immortal spirit paradise was the perfect opportunity to test the loyalty of the holy worshippers. All of the holy worshippers were willing to lay down their lives for him and face the blood tribe Tao integration stage emperors head-on with the determination to die. This was already a good proof of their loyalty. Enlil stepped forward and arrived before Su Xiaolan. Are you all right, Xiaolan? Enlil was struck by an indescribable sense of pain and rage at the sight of her blood-stained body. I'm fine. Let's get out of here. Su Xiaolan held on to Enlin's hand. Enlil nodded. My last attack wasn't enough to kill Emperor Yi Deng. Once the power of the sword burial disappears, his terrifying regenerative abilities will allow him to quickly recover his combat prowess, and it'll be very difficult for us to escape. Giant Enlil, should we go to the battleship first? Tina asked. Huh? Enlil faltered slightly before coming to his senses and nodding in response. Was her role as the battleship already so ingrained in everyone's hearts? Tina clapped her hands together, and a white spatial divine light proliferated outward, instantly teleporting everyone onto the deck of the Starfire battleship. Cassidy and the others immediately rushed over with grateful expressions at the sight of the injured Su Xiaolan. Holy Maiden Su Xiaolan, I didn't think that you would come here in person to save us. It's our fault that you're injured. Cassidy and the others were both touched and ashamed at the same time. All right, there's no need to thank me, Su Xiaolan said with a dainty smile. At the same time, she added in her mind, I'm here to worry about Enlil, not you guys. I don't want to save you be asterisk cheese who are always trying to seduce Enlil. Is everyone here? I'm going to run now. Lu Qianhuan's giggling voice sounded. She was very happy that she could finally get away from that Yi Deng maniac. Bai Ling, Su Xiaolan, Xiao Zhe, Tina, Cassidy, Merlin, Tobias, and the remaining 10 returned to Void Stage holy worshippers had all gathered on the deck of the battleship. A smile appeared on Enlin's face. Let's go home. Chapter 1419. The Starfire battleship's protective barrier enshrouded everyone, and the entire battleship was as black as the night sky with specks of starlight glowing from afar. Starfire acceleration. Lu Qianhuan let loose a clear cry as countless stars appeared around the battleship. A boundless power of stars propelled the massive battleship at an increasing speed. 1 kilometer per second, 10,000 meters per second. In the end, the 100-kilometer-long warship began to sink into the void, disappearing into the sea of stars. The immortal spirit paradise had been reduced to rubble, but there were still some blood tribe survivors here. They all heaved heavy sighs of relief as they looked on at the direction in which the battleship had disappeared. Phew! Thank God we managed to avoid a calamity. We didn't avoid a calamity, and Lin only spared us. If he wanted to kill us, it would have been a piece of cake for him. What did he mean when he said that all ambitious cultivators were welcome to join the Holy Blood Cult? I think he meant exactly what he said. All of the Blood Tribe powerful beings looked at each other as a peculiar thought appeared in their minds. Roar! Roar! The infernal Rakshasa was still struggling frantically on the ground. The power of the wind sword was beginning to disappear, and its massive body was quickly fusing back together as a terrifying blood energy soared into the sky again. Kill! I'm going to kill all of you! A terrifying killing intent erupted forth alongside the infernal Rakshas's roar. Run! Emperor Yi Deng is still in a berserk state. All of the Blood Tribe powerful beings immediately fled into the distance upon seeing this. One of the Blood Tribe powerful beings didn't even get a chance to move before a mountainous meteor hammer came crashing down toward him, which continued to expand in his field of vision. Boom! Earth tremored violently. A massive crater appeared on the immortal spirit paradise. As for that Blood Tribe powerful being, he had already been completely obliterated. All of the Blood Tribe powerful beings fled even faster upon seeing this, but at the same time, a sense of sorrow welled up in their hearts. They had risked their lives for their emperor, but in the end, not only were they in danger of being killed by their enemies, but they were also in danger of being killed by their enraged emperor. The immortal spirit paradise descended into chaos again. Yi Deng, who had lost his mind, was like a god of destruction as he rampaged through the immortal spirit paradise, slashing people and splitting mountains in his path. Not long after, the black silk appeared in the distance, connecting to the immortal spirit paradise. A clear shout came from afar. Eden, are you crazy? A woman in a black imperial robe strode toward Yi Deng and pressed a hand toward the air. Countless threads of silk frantically wrapped around the eight-armed demon god on the ground, binding it tightly like ropes. It's Empress Helen. Great, there's finally hope. The group of Blood Tribe members looked at the woman in the distance, and it was as if they had seen a goddess. They were so moved that tears welled up in their eyes. Roar! The infernal Rakshasa was still struggling. Helen gritted her teeth as she injected her power of the divine Tao into the silk to repress the infernal Rakshas's rampage. The two sides seemed to be in a deadlock. At this moment, an indistinct voice came from above. Suppress. A giant golden palm covered the sky, descending from the sky. Before the palm had even arrived, the infernal Inferno Azura was already forced to kneel on the ground. The giant golden palm became smaller and smaller, but its power became more and more terrifying. The joints all over the infernal Rakshas's body creaked, as if it were about to collapse. All of the Blood Tribe cultivators could see a graceful figure descend from the sky with a glowing palm that was crashing down toward the infernal Rakshas's head. Bam! A resounding boom erupted as golden ripples proliferated outward for over 50 kilometers. Countless golden divine symbols spread from the infernal Rakshas's head to its entire body. The infernal Rakshasa howled with agony, and it clutched its head as if it were about to explode. At the same time, its body began to shrink, and its blood energy quickly dissipated like a deflated balloon. Not long after that, the infernal Rakshasa transformed back into Eden. Eden's features were deathly pale, and he panted heavily as he knelt to the ground. He seemed to have suffered severe backlash, and he threw up a few more mouthfuls of blood. The golden divine symbols were still flashing on his body, sealing away his power. What's happening to me? Eden was in a daze as he stared at the ruins in front of him. You've lost control, Eden. Look at everything before you. This is all your fault. Helen spoke in a cold voice with an extremely dark expression. She discovered that the three holy golden guardians that she was most proud of had all disappeared. You had the Blood Patriarch formation, so how did it end up like this? I think it's time for you to explain everything to me. Emperor Fu Tian's expression was just as unfriendly. Anyone would be enraged to see their home torn apart like this. Eden's lips trembled as memories flooded into his mind. His body shuddered as an expression of rage and horror appeared on his face. It's Enlin. Enlin. Emperor Fu Tian and Empress Helen's expressions both shifted at the same time. Emperor Yi Deng began to recount everything that had happened here. Enlin had launched a self-detonating rocket attack, and he was only at the return to void stage, but he was already terrifyingly powerful. All of the Blood Tribe mighty figures had rebelled as holy worshippers, and he had rescued the 3 holy disciples from the Blood Tribe Holy Land with a Tao integration stage battleship. Emperor Fu Tian and Empress Helen listened to all of this with incredulity etched on their faces. There was only one thought in their minds, and that was, how did Lin do this? Emperor Fu Tian, Helen, Empress Helen, who was proficient in soul-searching, murmured, "He's not lying, Emperor Fu Tian. The Celestial Court and the 4-9 Immortal Sexure are cooperating well. Our Blood Tribe admits defeat this time. By the way, where is Emang?" Helen suddenly asked. Emperor Fu Tian's expression shifted. "Crap, he's still at the Blood Tribe Holy Land." There's only one holy disciple in the Blood Tribe at this moment, and that was Emperor Emang. Emperor Emang was still at the Blood Tribe Holy Land, and none of the emperors knew what was going on there. However, a sense of foreboding welled up in all of the emperors' hearts. This day was a cataclysmic one for the Blood Tribe in the Dark Marshlands. The 3 holy disciples and many top-rate mighty figures had betrayed the Blood Tribe. Tens of thousands of Blood Tribe powerful beings had perished, including a dozen or so returned to Void Stage mighty figures. Emperor Yi Deng had been severely wounded, and no one knew whether Emperor Mang was dead or alive. This series of blows had dealt a heavy blow to the Blood Tribe. Not taking into account everything else, it would probably take over 1,000 years for them to recover within the Starfire battleship. And Lin was meditating on the deck of the battleship, quickly recovering from his injuries. His voice transmission talisman suddenly lit up. He pulled out his voice transmission talisman to find that it was a call from the Celestial Arch. "Hello, Lin, are you feeling better? Can you tell me in detail what's going on? Did everything go well?" The Celestial Arch asked in a concerned voice. "It went pretty well. The 3 holy disciples and 10 holy worshippers have all been rescued. As for the enemy Blood Tribe powerful beings, tens of thousands of them died. A dozen or so returned to Void Stage mighty figures were killed, and the 3 holy Golden Guardians were captured alive. Emperor Mang has probably gone insane, and Yi Deng is severely wounded. That's about it." And Lin gave a brief summary. The Celestial Arch, Bad *SS. Chapter 1420. The Celestial Arch truly admired Enlin. There weren't many cultivators that the Celestial Arch admired, but Enlin was the only one that the Celestial Arch had praised as Bad *SS. The Celestial Arch couldn't think of any other adjectives to describe what he was feeling, so he could only use the word Bad *SS. He and Emperor Zui were able to hold off Emperor Fu Tian and Empress Helen. However, the Immortal Spirit Paradise was still guarded by Emperor Yi Deng and Emperor Mang, as well as tens of thousands of powerful Blood Tribe powerful beings, and returned to Void Stage Blood Tribe mighty figures. And Lin was only a return to Void Stage cultivator, but he was able to charge into the Immortal Spirit Paradise just like that. No one would believe him if he told them about this. What the Celestial Arch didn't think was that news would really spread. Even though the Blood Tribe had decided to keep this news a secret, there were still a few Blood Tribe powerful beings who had witnessed everything that happened in the Immortal Spirit Paradise. Thus, the news spread. Lin had led the 4-9 Immortal Sect to charge into the Blood Tribe's Immortal Spirit Paradise. The 3 holy disciples and a dozen or so Blood Tribe higher-ups had betrayed the Blood Tribe at the same time. All of this was extremely explosive news. The 4-9 Immortal Sect dominated all of the headlines on the Tai Chu continent again. Shocking. The sect leader of the model sect of the Kingdom of the 9 States was like this. The sect leader of an immortal sect had this kind of relationship with the higher-ups of the Blood Tribe. This was the man who made the 3 Blood Tribe holy disciples kneel before him. He was the sect leader, as well as the holy leader of the Blood Tribe. Wasn't Lin good or evil? The 3 holy disciples had bowed to him. The 4 emperors had all knelt, and he had once fought against an army of 10 million. So this was the truth behind the Blood Tribe's immortal spirit paradise? Men fell silent, and women shed tears. Countless pieces of news circulated throughout the entire continent, and the names of Enlin and the 4-9 Immortal sect soon reverberated throughout the entire continent. Not only were normal cultivators astonished this time, but many of the first-rate powers on the continent were also astonished by the power displayed by the 4-9 Immortal sect. Many of the mighty figures were dumbstruck. The 4-9 Immortal sect was growing way too quickly. They had just battled the Dragon Court of the Eastern Seas last year, and now they had almost destroyed the entire Blood Tribe base this year. Did they have to be so freakish? It wasn't that no one doubted the authenticity of the news, but the fact that the upper echelons of the blood race remained silent on the matter, even though the news had spread like wildfire in the outside world. It was as if they had fallen silent, which further confirmed the authenticity of the news. The 4-9 Immortal sect's prestige soared once again in the hearts of all living beings on the continent. Previously, everyone thought that this was a top cultivation sect that could rival the 9 imperial clans. Now, everyone was beginning to think that it was a first-rate force on the continent that could rival the 4 major celestial sects. Kings of World. This was a terrifying power that had a Tao integration stage super mighty figure among its ranks, and it didn't have to bow down to anyone. The 4-9 Immortal sect didn't have a Tao integration stage super mighty figure among its ranks, but it had to return to Void stage Enlin. The story of Enlin hanging Eden up and hammering him had almost become an illusion that all the children knew. An exceptional prodigy whose power rivaled that of a Tao integration stage super mighty figure would be treated as a Tao integration stage super mighty figure regardless of whether you were a Tao integration stage super mighty figure or not. That was how realistic the living beings of the Tai Chu continent were. Dragon Court of the Eastern Seas. A.O. Meng and his children stared at the newspaper with their mouths agape. Fake. This has to be fake. How did Lin kill so many people in the immortal spirit paradise? A.O. Meng's hands trembled as he held onto the newspaper. Just what kind of powerful being had he provoked? Pass down my orders. No one was allowed to provoke the 4-9 Immortal sect for any reason. All violators will be banished from the Dragon Court. A.O. Meng yelled. Princess Inu of the Dragon Court was also staring blankly at the man in the newspaper. When you were at the spirit nurturing stage, I was also at the spirit nurturing stage. When you were at the soul formation stage, I was still at the spirit nurturing stage. When you were at the return to void stage, I was still at the spirit nurturing stage. When you pummeled a Tao integration stage, super mighty figure, I was still at the spirit nurturing stage. Tears welled up in Princess Inu's eyes. Perhaps it was because she hated herself for being so stupid, or perhaps it was because of the speed at which Enlin was progressing. The Dragon Court was scared sh *Tles, and the Darkwing tribe was also scared sh *Tles. On the floating continent, the Darkwing tribe's meeting was going on as usual. The Darkwing tribe emperor sat on his throne and looked down at the monarchs. The Moonlit Night Monarch is currently at a critical juncture in her Tao integration stage after intercepting Enlin and seizing the evil-slaying sword. It looks like the mission to seize the evil-slaying sword actually contains a massive opportunity. Monarchs, are there any who would like to accompany me to intercept Enlin and seize the evil-slaying sword? Everyone was astonished upon hearing this. The Darkwing tribe emperor, who had always been afraid of death, was planning to take Enlin's evil-slaying sword by force. The Darkwing tribe emperor stood up and spoke in a heroic voice. Who is willing to accompany me to seize the holy relic of our tribe, the evil-slaying sword? Within the palace, all the monarchs looked up at the emperor on the throne with hesitation in their eyes. Starry Night Monarch, you're the first monarch to accept the mission to seize the evil-slaying sword. I will be leading the team this time. Are you willing to accompany me? The Darkwing Emperor asked in a heroic voice. The Starry Night Monarch's voice became even more heroic. Darkwing Emperor, I am willing to provide energy for the heart of the heavens for another 100 years. Darkwing Emperor, why was the Starry Night Monarch able to refuse in such a straightforward manner? And why was there a hint of smugness and pride in her voice? Heavenly Knight Monarch, you are the most powerful monarch among the monarchs. How about you accompany me? The Dark-Wing Emperor asked. Heavenly Knight Monarch, hee. The veins on the Dark-Wing Emperor's forehead bulged. Correct your attitude. The Heavenly Knight Monarch's expression became serious. I'm not going. The Dark-Wing Emperor, after a series of discussions, the Dark-Wing Emperor fell into a state of deep self-doubt as he sat on his throne. Sigh, I'm so lonely. All of the monarchs would rather carry bricks and build new homes and accompany the Dark-Wing Emperor to seize the evil-slaying sword within the Sea Heart Palace of the West Sea. Lan Xiaoni's eyes were like stars as she read the newspaper. Big Boss and Lin is so awesome. He's turned the entire Blood tribe upside down. Lan Xingyang also sighed with emotion, as expected of the super heavenly lightning god. With his rate of growth, perhaps he'll be able to carry out that grand plan soon. We have to work harder as well. Within the cabin of life. Master, and Lin is already able to pummel Yi-Ding. Can you let me spar with him? Black Spirit Snake implored. Niwa was playing with the potted plant before her with a faint smile on her face. What's so great about beating Yi-Ding? You can beat him as well. Black Spirit Snake asked. Then how powerful do I have to be before I can spar with Lin? When he's more powerful than you, Niwa replied. Black Spirit Snake. Is this how you bully snakes? Am I your little cutie? Or isn't Lin your little cutie? Black Spirit Snake felt like she had fallen out of favor. Just as the outside world was in a frenzy due to the Immortal Spirit Paradise incident. The 4-9 Immortal Sect was decorated with lanterns and banners to welcome their newest member. Chapter 1421. Pitter-patter, pitter-patter. Outside the gates of the 4-9 Immortal Sect, spell firecrackers rang out across the entire grassland. Colorful fireworks soared into the sky, creating a series of vibrant flowers and totems in the night sky. Inside the sect, red and gold lanterns were hung up. The flickering flames illuminated the monotonous night sky with mottled shadows. On a small plaza near the full moon mountain, thousands of people had gathered here to hold a large-scale celebration. It was extremely lively. This was a grand occasion where all of the 4-9 Immortal Sect's core members, inner sect disciples, and outer sect disciples were gathered together to celebrate. There were male and female disciples dancing on the stage. There were also disciples drinking to their heart's content, sparring with one another, bragging, or participating in all types of challenges and raffle events. The 4-9 Immortal Sect had become the 5th sect in the Kingdom of the 9 States. All of the inner sect disciples and outer sect disciples were extremely proud to be part of the 4-9 Immortal Sect. They could hold their heads high even when they were outside. Of course, there was no way that the 4-9 Immortal Sect would bully others. You want to ask why? Let's recite the 4-9 Immortal Sect's mission statement first. Freedom, democracy, harmony. The 4-9 Immortal Sect was still an elite sect, and they only had a total of just over 5,000 disciples, and this was only the number of inner sect disciples and outer sect disciples. As for the other 4 super sects, they would have at least a few 100,000 or even 1,000,000 disciples. Looking at it this way, the 4-9 Immortal Sect did indeed have a small population. However, that didn't matter. And Lin didn't care how many people there were. He couldn't just randomly accept disciples, especially inner sect disciples. They had to be liked by the Pavilion Lords and be to their liking. Furthermore, if the 4-9 Immortal Sect from the Divine Mirror World and the Divine Source Continent were taken into account, then the 4-9 Immortal Sect would actually be more powerful than the 4 Super Immortal Sects. Look, the sect leader is here. Should I go and offer him a toast? Some of the female disciples couldn't help but squeal, while others were completely infatuated. As the outer sect disciples of the 4-9 Immortal Sect, this was the first time that they had seen their legendary sect leader up close. He really was just as handsome as the rumors described him to be. He was handsome, elegant, and dignified, and Lin was very familiar with this kind of gaze. It was actually a form of personal worship that was enhanced by various halos. He was still very aware of his own appearance. No matter what, his face was still slightly inferior to Brother Chang's. As soon as Lin thought of this, he smiled brightly at the disciples who were looking at him. This scene caused the female disciples to scream again. He wandered around because he wanted to get acquainted with the outer sanctum disciples. After all, they often carried out missions in various parts of the 9 states, and it was quite tiring for them. As the sect leader, he naturally had to get closer to them. From time to time, he would drink with his disciples, chat, and ask for their suggestions or thoughts. When a female disciple invited him to dance, he would politely refuse. After all, he wasn't that kind of person. Su Xiaolan was still here. He still wanted to live well. Everyone was happy for a while. And Lin made his way to the front of the stage, and thunderous applause erupted before he even had a chance to say anything. He looked at the familiar and unfamiliar faces below the stage, and he couldn't help but smile. And Lin cleared his throat. Next, let me introduce the new members of the Blood Pavilion. There are a total of 13 new members of the Blood Pavilion, which are Cassidy, Tobias, Merlin, Jesse, a series of crimson-robed blood, tribe, mighty figures with golden hair and crimson eyes made their way to the front of the stage before bowing and waving at the disciples below with smiles on their faces. All of the 5,000 disciples drew a sharp intake of breath upon seeing this. These 13 new members are all returned to Void Stage mighty figures, right? I've heard that they are, and they're all veteran returned to Void Intermediate Stage mighty figures. Tobias and Jesse are even returned to Void Final Stage mighty figures. What a terrifying lineup. All of them are returned to Void Stage mighty figures. Just the Blood Pavilion alone is comparable to the 9 Imperials. All of the disciples exclaimed in amazement, and even the pavilion lords and elders were dazed. An envious expression appeared on Tang Shiman's face. There are so many mighty figures, but only Lin can keep them at bay. Lu Qianhuan harumphed. I'm not convinced. I can keep them at bay too. If these people don't behave, I don't mind giving them a taste of the Starfire Annihilation Cannon. Su Qianyun cocked her head to the side as she turned her dreamy blue eyes toward the woman beside her. Lu Qianhuan, aren't you a young sorceress? Why are you a young sorceress now? Lu Qianhuan giggled. A young sorceress is also a type of young sorceress. She wasn't going to say that she was tired of using a few of Lux's techniques. Oh! Su Qianyun nodded with a hint of understanding in her eyes. On the stage, Lin continued. Next, we will be assigning members to the Blood Pavilion. First, the Pavilion Lord of the Blood Pavilion, Blair, has retired as an elder due to his advanced age. Tobias will be the Pavilion Lord, Cassidy and Merlin will be the Vice Pavilion Lords, and everyone else will be the core disciples of the Blood Pavilion. All of the disciples swallowed involuntarily upon seeing this. The Blood Pavilion should be the most powerful pavilion in the 4-9 Immortal Sect, right? Of course. Even the weakest disciple is a return to Void Intermediate Stage mighty figure. Where are you going to find a pavilion branch like this? Even the 4 great sects aren't this bad *SS, right? I've only been in seclusion for 2 years. What happened to the 4-9 Immortal Sect? All of the disciples were discussing spiritedly among themselves. The Blood Pavilion was the most powerful pavilion in the 4-9 Immortal Sect. Xiaozhe smiled and didn't say anything. The 3 returned to Void Final Stage mighty figures of the Dragon Pavilion hadn't even said anything, and Xiao Tu was a return of Void Stage mighty figure who was preparing for the Dao integration stage. Bai Ling of the Purple Star Pavilion also smiled. The Starfire battleship of her Purple Star Pavilion hadn't even opened fire yet. Tina also raised her proud little face. If she brought out a bunch of return to Void Stage mighty figures from her realm pavilion, it would be quite a terrifying sight. In another 100 years, the Divine Mirror World would become more powerful than anyone could imagine. The introduction of new members concluded. The plaza transformed into a sea of joy again. Not only were there all types of interesting activities and competitions, but there were also all sorts of mighty figures displaying their Dao techniques and true intents. And Lin's disciples all performed very well in all of these activities. For example, Xiao Zhe, who wasn't very good with words, took first place in the sweet talk competition. Not only was Fanny flirted with, but even some of the female and male disciples were blushing upon hearing this. And Lin had also taken down a lot of notes during this activity. Another example was Yiling, who imitated a cat's meow in an adorable manner and won first place over Dabai. Dabai was actually quite indignant. Yiling clearly wasn't as adorable as him. The main judge, and Lin, analyzed the situation. Dabai was adorable to begin with, so he didn't need to sell himself. So the winner of the adorable manner competition went to Yiling. Dabai was completely defeated by this explanation. There were many other fun activities like this. The 4-9 Immortal Sex celebratory activities lasted for an entire night. All of the disciples only began to disperse the next morning, and Lin didn't disperse. Instead, he looked at all of the Blood Tribe mighty figures before him with a solemn expression. Chapter 14:22. Cassidy, Tobias, Merlin, Bryce, Jesse, and a total of 14 returned to Void Stage Blood Tribe mighty figures stood before Lin with solemn expressions. Holy Leader, please tell me what you want. I'm willing to do anything for you. Cassidy's eyes shone with a scorching light as she spoke in an extremely determined voice. Don't overthink things. And Lin's expression eased slightly as he said in a gentle voice, I called you all here so that you can help me test my blood. Test his blood? 14 pairs of eyes instantly lit up with unprecedented light. I'll do it. I'll do it. Pick me. Pick me. Holy Leader, pick me. I'm willing to take on this noble mission. I'm an expert at testing blood. I can lick as much blood as you want. All of the Blood Tribe mighty figures were extremely excited as they yelled at the top of their lungs, hoping to get a spot. And Lin raised his voice at the sight of the fervent mighty figures around him. Let me finish first. Some of you might not know what kind of properties my holy blood possesses, but I'm not sure if you're aware of it. All of the Blood Tribe cultivators who can withstand the power of my holy blood will feel extremely elated. However, all of the Blood Tribe cultivators who can't withstand the power of my holy blood will die on the spot. Have you all realized this? Yes. Let me do it, Holy Leader. I'll do it. I'm not afraid of death. I'll do anything for you. Holy Leader. All of the Blood Tribe mighty figures were still yelling with fervor in their eyes. They had tasted in Lin's blood before, and they had never failed to withstand the power of his holy blood. How could they give up on such a blissful opportunity? And Lin immediately knew what they were thinking, and he added, when I was at the soul formation stage, return to void initial stage Blood Tribe mighty figures were also able to withstand my holy blood. However, ever since I achieved initial success in my body of the war god, all returned to void initial stage Blood Tribe mighty figures who came into contact with my holy blood would die for sure. Thus, my holy blood became returned to void intermediate stage. Now, I made another major breakthrough, and I'm a return to Void Stage Cultivator. Do you understand what I'm saying? All of the Blood Tribe mighty figures drew a sharp intake of breath upon hearing this. So the sacred ancestor's sacred blood would become stronger and stronger. He was able to poison return to Void initial stage cultivators to death at the soul formation stage. Now that he was a return to Void Stage Cultivator, would he really be able to poison them to death? The return to Void intermediate stage Blood Tribe mighty figures were beginning to hesitate. They felt that there was a high chance that they would die if they drank the latest version of the divine blood. It felt good, but he couldn't throw his life away for the sake of it. As long as he was alive, he would have the opportunity to enjoy himself countless times. Sacrificing one's life for a single pleasure was called idiocy. The holy disciples looked hesitant. They were fanatical and loyal, but they were not stupid. It was not worth it to waste their lives here. The warm atmosphere on the scene suddenly cooled down. Just as the fanaticism on the faces of the Blood Tribe's supreme beings gradually subsided, a figure stepped forward. Sacred Ancestor, allow me. A well-built man with a buzz cut looked at Lin with a firm expression. If I die as well, then there's no point in continuing the holy blood test. The person who had stepped forward was none other than the return to Void final stage Tobias, who was also the Lord of the Blood Pavilion. All of the Blood Tribe mighty figures were struck by a sense of awe and veneration as they looked at the departing figure. Tobias had reached the return to Void final stage with great difficulty, but he was still willing to take this risk. This was the Blood Pavilion lore that they were all convinced of. And Lin looked at Tobias with a serious expression before patting his shoulder with a smile. I was right about you. Good job. However, we don't need to return to Void final stage mighty figure for now. There will be someone else to replace you. Tobias faltered slightly upon hearing this. Who's going to replace me? At this moment, Tina, who had been sitting silently on Lin's shoulder this entire time, suddenly pulled out a black ball with a dainty smile. The 3 holy golden guardians. They're still in my hands. Almost all of the Blood Tribe mighty figure's expressions shifted upon hearing this. The 3 holy golden guardians were Ada, Jin Yao, and Jin Ling. They were the most powerful return to Void stage mighty figures in the Blood Tribe, and they could unleash power comparable to that of a Dao integration stage mighty figure for a short period of time. Their status in the Blood Tribe is only inferior to the Emperors and the Holy Disciples. I didn't think that you'd be able to capture them as well. Cassidy's crimson eyes shimmered with excitement. Mistress Tina is so impressive. She was able to capture 3 holy golden guardians on her own. Merlin was also astonished. The holy golden guardians were undoubtedly extremely powerful, so it was extremely difficult for her to capture all 3 of them alive. All right, that's enough. And Lin smiled. I asked them to test the properties of the blood, so that you'll be safer when you receive my new blood. He turned to Tina as he spoke. Come on. Tina nodded before leaping backward. At the same time, she waved a hand and tossed the black ball toward Lin. Come on in, Pikachu. Whoosh. A white light enshrouded Lin. And Lin could sense an extremely irresistible spatial suction force from the light. He was unable to resist this spatial suction force and was instantly sucked in. Master, holy leader, all of the Blood Tribe mighty figures were given a fright upon seeing Lin being sucked into the ball. Don't worry, he's very safe in my pokeball. Tina carefully retrieved the ball before injecting her divine sense into it. Lin was struck by a rush of dizziness, and when he regained his vision, he had already arrived at a place with lush mountains and clear waters. Wasn't this place a little too good to be used as a cage? Bam, bam, bam. The sound of something being smashed erupted from a nearby mountain, and Lin made his way over to discover a Volpera with a black tail and black ears wielding a hoe as it smashed a strange black mountain to dig out a series of strange crystals. Each and every one of its strikes was imbued with the power of the divine Tao, but the black mountain was extremely tough, and it only managed to dig out a small crystal after a long time. I only need to dig out 3 more tons of crystals, and I can rest for the rest of the day. The black fox male was sweating profusely, but he was still smashing the mountain with a joyful expression. Goddess Tina has reduced my workload by 0.5 kilogram. Long live the goddess. And Lin, this guy was probably going to be crippled. He was a return to void stage sort of mortal. Couldn't he just be a little more stubborn? The black fox male detected the commotion behind him, and a faint smile appeared on his face. Hee, another newcomer? I hope you know what's good for you. Tina is the most important person in this world, so don't go against Goddess Tina. Otherwise, he turned to look at Lin, but his words were caught in his throat before he even had a chance to finish his sentence. The man's expression slowly turned from astonishment to excitement. Lin. The black fox male was on the verge of tears at the sight of Lin, and he hurriedly ran over to him. Are you here to take me out? I've been through hard labor, and I'm a good boy. And Lin's lips twitched. I'm not here to look for you today. Let me ask you, have you seen the 3 Blood Tribe females? The black fox male nodded relentlessly. I have. If you promise to let me go, I'll tell you where they are. Hee. Do you not understand the situation you're in? And Lin chuckled coldly. Do you believe me when I tell you they'll get Tina to increase your workload by a ton every day? They're on that mountain. The black fox male pointed toward a certain mountain, and Lin nodded with satisfaction before disappearing on the spot. Soon, he found the legendary 3 golden holy protectors, and Lin was then given a fright again. Chapter 1423. The 3 holy golden guardians were cowering at the edge of the boulder with expressions of shock and horror on their faces as they trembled uncontrollably. A man was standing before them with a perverted smile on his face. Cuckoo. Run. Let's see where you can run to. The man licked his lips in a perverted manner as he spoke. If it weren't for the fact that our powers have been sealed, we wouldn't have been bullied by you. Ada gritted her teeth with an enraged expression. Cut the crap. Are you going to obey or not? The man chuckled as he pulled out a whip. If you don't obey, I'll whip you. Ada, Jean Ling, and Jean Yao all looked as if they were facing death with equanimity. Lin, if you want to kill us, then kill us, the three holy golden guardians roared in unison. That's right. The man who had pulled out the whip was none other than Lin. The real Lin stood off to the side with a dumbstruck expression. When he saw the man pull out the whip and was about to lash Lin, he couldn't hold back any longer and charged out before grabbing onto the man's hand. Who the F***CK are you whipping? The man faltered momentarily before turning to look at the man who looked identical to him. The three holy golden guardians were also staring at the two identical Lin with dumbstruck expressions. One Lin suddenly appeared and stopped the other Lin. You're twins. Jean Ling seemed to have realized something as she exclaimed in shock. Lin almost threw up a mouthful of blood. Twins my A**guess. Splat. He slapped the fake Lin into the ground before looking up into the sky. Little Na, I think you owe me an explanation. I seem to have forgotten to get rid of the fake Lin. Tina's apologetic voice sounded from the sky. That doesn't sound like an explanation. I want an explanation. Lin's expression darkened. I think your appearance is more intimidating, so I plan to use you as a template to train them. That way, I can get twice the result with half the effort, Tina explained in a low voice. Is this the reason why you made me look so wretched? Lin felt as if his heart had been stabbed by a sword. Where did that innocent little elf go? Give me back my old cotton-padded jacket. Ada and the rest were stunned. So the perverted Lin from before was fake. It's mainly because they wouldn't be scared if you weren't a little more perverted. Under Lin's interrogation, Tina's voice gradually softened as she spoke. Lin was completely speechless. Was he supposed to be the antagonist for a while now? Pow! He struck out with his palm again, directly turning the fake Lin into ashes. The brutal scene made Ada, Jean Ling, and Jean Yao's faces turn pale. Only then did Lin turn his attention to the famous three golden holy guardians of the blood kindred. When he saw their faces clearly, he was stunned once again. All three of them were dressed in golden robes, and their facial features were exquisite and chiseled. Their auras were noble and holy, and they were all quite beautiful. However, that was not the point. More importantly, the three women in front of him all looked exactly the same, other than Ada's short golden hair, and the gold spirit and the gold demon's wavy long hair, their red eyes, their delicate nose, their curved eyebrows, and their pink lips were exactly the same and indistinguishable. Lin faltered. His first thought was that Tina was pulling a prank again, and he yelled, Little Na, stop fooling around. I didn't do anything. What's wrong? Tina was a little confused, and Lin pointed at the three women before him. Why do these three look exactly the same? Isn't it enough to fake Lin? Do you want to fake Ada as well? We're triplets. Ada glanced at Lin with a speechless expression. Huh? And Lin stared at Ada and the two people behind her with astonishment on his face. He discovered that they were also looking at him with cold expressions, as if they were looking at an idiot. He suddenly understood why Jean Ling had speculated that he and the fake Lin were twins. As it turned out, Jean Ling, Jean Yao, and Ada were triplets. During the battle, only Ada had revealed her face, and the other two had been obscured by their black robes, so he didn't see them clearly, and Lin drew a sharp intake of breath before suddenly becoming excited. He looked at the three beautiful, voluptuous, and tall women before him, and he couldn't help but burst into laughter. What would he want? Ada seemed to have sensed in Lin's gaze, and she took a couple of steps back with a cautious expression on her face. The current Lin was very similar to the fake Lin from before. Nothing. I just want you to taste my treasures. And Lin approached the three golden holy guardians with a smile. Ada, Jean Ling, and Jean Yao's faces all turned deathly pale upon hearing this. Their powers had all been sealed in this space. So if Enlin really wanted to do something, don't come any closer. Jean Yao drew her golden longsword as she yelled, I'm coming right over. What are you going to do to me? Enlin chuckled coldly. If you come over, tears welled up in Jean Yao's eyes, and she pressed her long sword against her snowy white neck with an unyielding expression. I'll kill myself right in front of you. Enlin, as expected of the first guardian to be taken in by Little Na's pokeball, she sure was adorably dumb. Enlin made a grabbing motion with his hand. Gotcha! Space congealed. Jean Yao was completely immobilized, as if her body had been immobilized. The three women who had been sealed were no different from mortals. They were still at the mercy of Enlin. Threatening him with death had no effect on him at all. Expressions of despair appeared on the faces of the triplets upon realizing this. Say, who's the big sister and who's the little sister? Enlin asked with a sly smile. Ada pursed her lips as she stood at the very front. I'm the big sister. If you have any problems, come at me. Don't bully them. As expected, the big sister looks more mature than the big sister. This was the first time Enlin had seen such unique triplets, and he couldn't help but smack his lips. Ada was already prepared, but she still couldn't help but stumble back a couple of steps at the sight of Enlin. However, to their surprise, Enlin didn't continue to press them. Instead, he sat down on a protruding rock. Don't worry, I'm not the kind of person you think I am. I'm here to give you a chance to redeem yourselves. As long as you promise me one thing, I can give you a chance to regain your freedom, Enlin said. As soon as this was said, the three holy golden guardians were unable to conceal their excitement. They had thought that they were going to be subjected to inhumane torture here, but now that they had a chance to escape, they naturally weren't going to let go of this opportunity. What is it? Ada asked. Enlin smiled. Drink my blood. As long as you promise to drink a mouthful of my blood, I can give you a chance to return to the outside world. Drink your blood. Ada was a little confused. What kind of request is that? Because my blood is very special and very potent. Enlin narrowed his eyes as he looked at the three women before him. After drinking my blood, there's a very high chance that you'll die. Hee hee, what the hell are you talking about? Us blood tribe cultivators are naturally adept at absorbing the blood of all living beings. There's no blood that we can't drink. Jean Ling chuckled coldly with a disdainful expression. I'll drink it, big sister. Chapter 1424. Don't. Ada stopped the impulsive Jean Ling and looked at Enlin with a cold expression. You have to swear a Tao heart vow that you'll give us our freedom after we drink your blood. Sure, I'll give you your freedom then. Enlin smiled and swore a Tao heart vow. The three sisters were all very excited to hear Enlin swear the vow. He really swore the vow. This blood might really be dangerous. That's right. We might have to pay with our lives if we want our freedom. I'm the oldest. I'm your big sister. Let me do it, Ada said. Jean Yao was not convinced. You only crawled out of your mother's womb a few seconds earlier than me. How are you the oldest? I have the biggest breasts, so I'll go first. The Jean Ling, who was the youngest in everything, wanted to fight for the lead, but she didn't know where to start. She wasn't the oldest, and her breasts weren't the biggest either. Enlin, these sisters are so close, they're all willing to die first. In the end, Ada stood in front of Enlin. Sect leader Enlin, I hope you can fulfill your promise, Ada said with a serious expression. Don't worry, that's if you want your freedom. Enlin did not deny it. Ada puffed out her chest with a serious expression. Then come, I'm ready. Enlin raised his head. Little Na, release Ada's seal. He was afraid that the seal would affect the accuracy of the blood test. In the next second, Ada felt power return her body. She was elated, and a bold idea suddenly occurred to her as she looked at Enlin. However, she suppressed this idea when she recalled the battle between Enlin and Yidang. Enlin extended his index finger and slit his wrist lightly. A few drops of blood floated into the air. Ada was on her guard, and she looked at the few drops of blood with a ferocious look in her eyes. However, when the drops of blood drifted toward her, a rare glazed expression appeared on her face. This smell is so fragrant, Ada murmured. It's a deadly fragrance. She stuck out her tongue and licked Lynn's blood into her mouth before swallowing it. Almost instantly, Ada's eyes widened, and her body began to tremble. Sister, how are you? Jean Ling and Jean Yao exclaimed in unison with anxious expressions on their faces. Ada blushed, and an infatuated expression appeared on her face as she said, "It smells so good." Jean Ling. Gold Demon opened her mouth wide, as if she had misheard. "What did you say?" Ada seemed to be still savoring the blood, and turned a deaf ear to Gold Demon's words. She sighed with emotion. "The blood seems to have cleansed all the impurities in my body and elevated my life. This is probably what true life is like. The most perfect life, the one and only life. It's over. Big Sister has gone crazy." Jean Yao's face was filled with sorrow. Jean Ling glowered at Lin with an enraged expression. "Bastard, didn't you say that drinking blood would only be dangerous? Why is my big sister retarded?" Slap. Jean Ling was slapped to the ground by Ada. "Don't you dare disrespect Master and Lin." Jean Ling and Jean Yao. Ada raised her head to look at Lin with a conflicted expression. A faint blush appeared on her face, and she clenched her fists tightly, as if she were resisting something. After a moment, her entire body relaxed, as if she had seen through Lin. "I finally understand why so many Blood Tribe mighty figures are willing to revere you as the holy leader. The answer lies in your blood." Lin also heaved a sigh of relief. "Looks like my blood can still be used after reaching the return to Void final stage." Ada raised her head to look at Lin. "This is not blood from the mortal world. I've never seen such miraculous blood. Who are you?" Lin Splade opened his hands with a calm expression. "I told you, I am the holy leader, the most holy being of your tribe, the one who can give the Blood Tribe a true future." In the past, Ada would have called Lin an idiot if he had said something like this. But now, Ada's body shuddered, and she clasped a hand over her heart with a pained expression. "How could this be? Why is it you?" "Big Sister, what's wrong?" Jean Yao couldn't help but ask. Jean Ling glared at Lin with a cold harumph. "She must have been fed some kind of magic potion by this man." "It's not some magic potion. It's my blood that has allowed her to observe the true meaning of life. If you don't believe me, you can have a taste." And Lin slit open his wrist and offered a few drops of blood to the two women. Ada saw this, but did nothing to stop it. She felt like it would be a huge pity if her two little sisters didn't get a chance to taste such perfect blood. In all honesty, she was already doing a very good job of refraining from stealing the blood from her little sisters. Jean Ling and Jean Yao had initially planned to slap the droplets of blood away. However, they faltered when the scent of the blood wafted toward them, and they couldn't help but stick out their tongues to lick the blood cautiously like little kittens. It was as if they had opened the door to a new world, and they couldn't stop themselves. How could this be? What kind of blood is this? Jean Ling's breathing accelerated. "Master and Lin, I was wrong," Jean Yao whimpered. "Can you give me a few more drops?" And Lin chuckled coldly. "You're free now, so piss off." Jean Yao looked at Lin with a pitiable expression and didn't move. Jean Ling also looked around, but she didn't want to say anything. Ada was enraged, and she snapped, "Look at you two. Can't you be a little more hardworking? Show me your courage." She made her way over to Lin as she spoke, and a stern expression appeared on her face. "Tell me, what do you want us to do for you to continue giving us your blood?" Jean Ling and Jean Yao's mouths gaped open. Was this the courage that their big sister was talking about? Using their courage to beg for blood? A faint smile appeared on Lin's face. "It's very simple. Establish a slave contract with me and become my servants, and I'll reward you with my blood whenever I'm happy." That's right, and Lin had never planned to give the Holy Golden Guardians their freedom. The Holy Golden Guardians were very powerful, so letting them go would be akin to letting them go back to the mountains. And Lin wasn't going to do something as stupid as that. Even though Lin had sworn to give them their freedom, they had to be willing to do so first. And Lin was confident that no one would be able to resist the temptation of his blood, and they would be willing to stay by Lin's side. Lin, is this your plan? Do you think I'll fall for it? You're too naive. I'm a holy golden guardian under Empress Helen's command. Ada gritted her teeth. Ah, big sister, I've fallen for your trap. Jean Yao yelled. Big sister, I've also fallen for your trap, Jean Ling stammered. At the same time, she raised her head to look at Lin with a hint of nervousness and anticipation in her eyes. Ada, you're making things very difficult for big sister. I really want to join the enemy. Ada struggled for a long time before tears flowed from her eyes. Little sister, big sister will accompany you. Thus, Lin obtained the Blood Tribe triplets in Tina's Pokeball. Chapter 1425. The three holy golden guardians were successfully instigated by Lin and became holy worshippers of the holy blood cult. Lin was elated, and he bestowed 1 milliliter of blood to each of the three sisters. The three sisters were instantly ecstatic to see this, and Lin was even beginning to suspect that these women were fake holy golden guardians. Holy leader, can you let us out now? Ada asked with anticipation in her eyes. Lin nodded with a smile. Of course. He had already established slave contracts with them, and with the allure of his holy blood, the three holy golden guardians were now very obedient. For some reason, Lin suddenly thought of Emperor and Mang with this in mind. Emperor and Mang was probably the only blood tribe being who could resist the allure of his blood. Lin was quite impressed by him. He didn't know how he was doing and if he had recovered yet. Tina released Lin, Ada, Jean Yao, and Jean Ling in her Pokeball at the same time. Lin was immediately greeted by the sight of all of the blood tribe mighty figures looking at him with anticipation in their eyes. My God, it really is the three holy golden guardians. They really are in Mistress Tina's Pokeball, and it looks like they've already been tamed by the holy leader, right? All of the blood tribe mighty figures discussed among themselves. Lin cleared his throat upon seeing this. Allow me to introduce to all of you the three new core disciples of our blood pavilion, Ada, Jean Ling, and Jean Yao. Clatter. Enthusiastic applause erupted. Hello, everyone. Please take care of us in the future. Ada extended an indifferent greeting. She felt like this was a little awkward. They had been enemies just a few days ago, but now they were comrades on the same side. She felt like she had changed too much, and it was a little awkward. However, Cassidy and the others were very enthusiastic in welcoming Ada and the others, as if they were benevolent elders welcoming their lost children. Sister Ada, have you finally realized how attractive our holy leader is? No one can see the blood of a sacred ancestor and not be tempted. Ms. Ada, I wanted to come and find you when I was recruiting offline players, but you were too close to Empress Helen, so I didn't dare to make a move. Who would have thought that fate would take a turn for the better and allow you to join us? The three holy princes were very enthusiastic, and this greatly alleviated the awkwardness of the golden holy protectors. And Lin saw that the three sisters were able to blend into the crowd, and he was very pleased. He clapped his hands to signal for everyone to quiet down. All right, I'm going to announce a result now. Blood Tribe cultivators of the return to Void final stage can absorb my holy blood. This result immediately made the Blood Tribe members cheer. Great, there's hope now. What about return to Void intermediate stage cultivators? Holy leader, I am at the pinnacle of the return to Void intermediate stage, and I am willing to do this experiment. Some of the holy disciples were already filled with passion, and their eyes burned with passion as they spoke. Cassidy and Merlin also made up their minds to be the first ones to do the experiment. Don't argue. How could I allow you to risk your lives? Why don't we just go to the Dark Marshlands and capture a Blood Tribe intermediate stage mighty figure? And Lin couldn't help but chuckle upon seeing this. All of the disciples were enlightened upon hearing this, and they all volunteered to go to the Dark Marshlands in person to carry out this mission. Jean Yao spoke in a feeble voice. If you want a Blood Tribe cultivator of the return to Void intermediate stage, I think I can give him to you. Everyone turned to look at Jean Yao upon hearing this. Jean Yao gently removed the golden jade bracelet from her wrist. This is an immortal rank spatial treasure, and there is a small space within it that can accommodate life forms. It was originally used by Empress Helen to imprison the most heinous of blood tribe criminals, and there just so happens to be a return to void intermediate stage criminal in there. And Lin was ecstatic. That's great. Little Yao, hurry up and bring out that criminal. Little Yao? A blush appeared on Jean Yao's face. No one had ever referred to her like this before. She wanted to say something, but she hesitated before silently teleporting the return to void intermediate stage blood tribe mighty figure out of the golden jade bracelet. Thump! A man whose hands and feet were bound by peculiar chains fell to his knees. He, Empress Helen, is finally going to let me go? The man with disheveled hair grinned. You should have done this a long time ago. I'm a return to void stage mighty figure, so there's no point in me staying in this prison. Why don't I redeem myself by doing some good deeds? Huh? He stared blankly at the scene before him. Well, what's going on? A bunch of blood tribe mighty figures were looking at him with benevolent expressions. He had some recollection of most of these blood tribe mighty figures. All of them were extremely renowned, powerful beings, and none of them were inferior to him. He discovered that things weren't quite as he had imagined. At this moment, an unfamiliar young man made his way over to him with a smile. Let you go? That's not going to happen. But I still have to congratulate you, brother. You're going to have a chance to taste the most delicious blood in this world. The blood tribe man whose hands and feet were tied sneered. Human? Who the F***CK are you? Don't look at me like that. When I was dominating the entire Tai Chu continent, who knows where you were drinking milk? He could sense that in Lin's cultivation base was only at the return to void initial stage, so he didn't pay him any heed. Unbeknownst to him, his words had enraged all of the blood tribe mighty figures present. Holy leader, that piece of trash dared to insult you. Let me kill him first. Don't. The holy leader still needs to use him. We can sever his arms and legs first. Unforgivable. He must be tortured to death. All of the blood tribe mighty figures with terrifying auras let loose a torrent of abuse. Don't worry, we'll repay all those who insult the holy leader 1,000-fold. Ada harumphed coldly. In her eyes, the holy leader was the most perfect living being. How could she allow a piece of trash to insult her? The blood tribe man was dumbstruck. He had only insulted this ordinary-looking human, but he had angered all of the blood tribe mighty figures. Even the vastly renowned holy golden guardians of the blood tribe were enraged. Their reactions were even more violent than when he had insulted Empress Helen. This time, even a fool would know that the identity of the man in front of him was not simple. Please spare me, holy leader. Please forgive me. Please forgive me. The blood tribe man kowtowed to Enlin with a thump. A man had to know when to yield and when to stand tall. Enlin was given a fright by the man's decisive actions, and he immediately poured blood into the man's mouth. Ah, what did you feed me? The man yelled. Ah, this taste. A second later, an intoxicated expression appeared on the man's face as an extreme sense of pleasure flowed through his entire body. All of the blood tribe disciples stared at the man before them with envious expressions, wanting nothing more than to take his place. However, all of a sudden, the man's eyes widened, and he clasped a hand over his own heart. Chapter 14:26. Ah! The blood tribe male clutched his chest with an agonized expression. At the same time, his vitality was quickly fading away. A sense of foreboding welled up in Enlin's heart upon seeing this. It looked like a return to void intermediate stage, being couldn't handle his blood. The blood tribe male was still struggling, and he was in as much agony as he had felt before. All of the return to void intermediate stage blood tribe mighty figures were also struck by fear upon seeing this. They weren't afraid of pain. Instead, they were afraid that they would never get a chance to taste the holy blood again. You can do it. Hang in there. Some of the blood tribe mighty figures couldn't help but offer words of encouragement. The blood tribe male clutched his chest, which was glowing with a peculiar red light. All of a sudden, a dazzling red light erupted from his heart. When the red light faded, the male's eyes widened, and his mouth gaped open. His entire body had been completely shriveled and devoid of vitality. He's dead? Tears of grief flowed down Cassidy's face. Am I not fated to taste the holy blood? Merlin's eyes were also filled with tears of despair. All of the return to void intermediate stage blood tribe mighty figures were extremely saddened by the blood tribe male's death, and their morale was at an all-time low. Ada finally understood what Enlin was referring to when he said his blood was dangerous. She was still feeling a little fearful, but at the same time, she was also feeling quite elated. Wouldn't there be a lot fewer competitors who could taste the holy leader's blood now? Ada, Jean Ling, and Jean Yao all burst into joyful laughter as if they were of one mind. And Lin offered words of consolation. Don't be too dejected. As long as you attain the divine Tao and progress to the return to void final stage, you'll be able to taste the holy blood. You have to fight for that goal. All of the blood tribe mighty figures finally regained some of their morale upon hearing this. Cassidy and Merlin were both at the pinnacle of the return to void intermediate stage, and their fighting spirit was reignited as their hearts were filled with unprecedented desire and determination. Holy Leader, we'll definitely do our best, Cassidy said with a firm expression. She then added in her heart, I'll do my best to suck your delicious blood dry. A faint smile appeared on Enlin's face. All right, take a good rest. I still have to apply to the Celestial Arch for your legal residency permits in the Kingdom of the Nine States. He was afraid that the powerful beings of the blood tribe would harm the innocent. So he added, Oh, right, you are not allowed to drink the blood of other innocent beings. If you do that, I will kill you on the spot. Tobias was confused. Why would we eat sh*t? Enlin, after tasting Enlin's blood, vampires found it difficult to swallow the blood of other living beings. This was probably what they meant by one who has seen the ocean cannot see the water in it. After settling down the blood tribe disciples, Enlin returned to his residence. He took out Shuem Ming Ming from his storage ring. Master, why didn't you let me go and meet those little fellows just now? Shuem Ming Ming shook its head and said, They haven't been subdued by my heroism yet. Enlin rolled his eyes. All right, now's not the time to flex. I'll let you out because I wanted to talk to you about my blood. Shuem Ming Ming's eyes immediately lit up with excitement at the mention of blood. Although it didn't have eyes, its two eye sockets were indeed glowing with a red light. It was quite adorable. Sure. I love your blood the most, Master. We can talk about anything. It would be perfect if you could reward me with a few drops of your blood. Shuem Ming Ming exclaimed excitedly. That will depend on your performance. And Lin didn't refuse. Immediately afterward, he asked, What do you think my blood is? Shuem Ming Ming raised its hands high into the air. Your blood is the light, the future, and the true meaning of life. And Lin's expression darkened. Stop sucking up to me. I want you to tell me the truth. I'm just an ordinary cultivator. So how do I have such powerful blood? The reason why he was asking Shuem Ming Ming was because Shuem Ming Ming had been transformed from the remains of the Blood Patriarch, which understood life the most. Logically speaking, it would understand life better than ordinary blood tribe mighty figures. Shuem Ming Ming tapped its skull with its finger and fell into deep thought. You're an ordinary cultivator? Are you King kidding me? Shuem Ming Ming said, Give me another drop of your blood to try. I'll analyze it properly. Enlin didn't care whether Shuem Ming Ming was trying to cheat him out of his food or drink. He gave Shuem Ming Ming a milliliter of his blood. Shuem Ming Ming immediately began to lick Shuem Ming Ming's blood hungrily. After a while, it smacked its lips as if it hadn't had enough. Master, how are you an ordinary cultivator? You have the purest blood I've ever seen. You're not a living being that should exist in this world. Through absorbing your blood, I can truly comprehend the true meaning of life. I feel that if we blood tribe members want to continue to evolve, we must use your blood as our goal and direction. Give me something practical, Enlin said in a stern voice. Shuem Ming Ming's skeletal frame shuddered. I think there are two reasons why your blood is so perfect. The first is that you were born with a special physique that is extremely close to the heavenly Tao. If I'm not wrong, it should be the Tian Ming Tao physique, right? Enlin's heart jolted, but he maintained a smile on his face. Who would have thought that a skeleton like you would know so much? Shuem Ming Ming replied honestly. I've inherited some of the Blood Patriarch's knowledge and experience. And Lin nodded. Please continue. The Tianming Dao physique is extremely close to the heavenly Dao. Living beings with this physique have extremely pure blood and are extremely receptive to the power of the heavenly Dao and the underworld Dao. It's also extremely easy for them to cultivate, so it's not an exaggeration to call it the blood of the heavenly Dao. This kind of blood is very good, but it's not perfect. Shui Mingming looked at Enlin with a scorching light in its eyes. Hence, I'm guessing that there's another power or something within your body that I can't understand. It can continuously improve your body and make your originally extremely pure blood even more perfect. Oh no, I can't just refer to your blood. I should say that it can make your life itself even more perfect. And Lin understood now. His natural physique and the system's modifications had caused his body to become like this. Is this a blessing or a curse? And Lin murmured. Shui Mingming was extremely excited. If this is a curse, then let me bear it. What a perfect body. That's the life I've been pursuing my entire life. Don't be ungrateful for your blessings. And Lin's lips twitched slightly. What the F*CK is ungrateful for my blessings. This system is a scam, no matter how I look at it. All right, that's what you said. If this is a curse, then you'll bear it. And Lin chuckled. Then it's a promise. Master, what do you mean? Shui Mingming was momentarily at a loss for words. And Lin didn't reply. Instead, he put Shui Mingming back into his storage ring. At the same time, he made a decision. If the system could be transferred to someone else, then it would be transferred to Shui Mingming. Chapter 1427. Lin composed himself before turning his attention to his system. The system had actually issued him a few new missions after he had progressed to the Return of Void stage, but all of them were extremely depressing. The only minor progress he had made was in the cultivation-based category. He had already made a significant breakthrough in his progress to the Return to Void intermediate stage. Return to Void intermediate stage beat 9 Dao integration stage living beings into submission. Current progress, March 9th. When Lin had first seen this mission, he had actually despaired. He had only just progressed to the Return to Void stage, and you're telling me to beat 9 Dao integration stage super mighty figures into submission? Don't look down on me, system. Tui. No, wait, system, you're overestimating me. And Lin was so devastated that he immediately banished the system to oblivion. However, not long after that, he really did beat Dao integration stage super mighty figures into submission, and not just one of them. The list was as follows: Immortal King Feng Weia, Emperor Yi Ding, and Emperor Meng. To put it more accurately, Emperor Meng wasn't beaten into submission by his martial prowess. Instead, he was subdued by his blood. This method seemed to be quite useful, and Lin wanted to pay another visit to the Blood Tribe. Only then would they have a chance to interact with one another. As for the Divine Might technique, it also had an upgrade requirement. Last time, it was the Great Divine Might technique, but this was even more powerful. It was the Super Divine Might technique. Super Divine Might technique completion requirement. Beat a God of Creation stage living being into submission. Look at this. The system was making God of Creation stage living beings look like they were just playing games. Niwa could easily beat him into submission with a flick of her finger, but how is he going to beat a god like Niwa into submission? This was a F*King suicidal mission. And Lin almost wanted to drag Tina out and beat her up, but he couldn't bring himself to do so. Little Na was so adorable. How could he bully her? Little Na. And Lin turned to the little fairy on his shoulder with a loving gaze. What is it, Giant Lin? Tina opened her bleary eyes and pinched Lin's earlobe with a confused expression. Are you at the Genesis tier? And Lin asked curiously. Tina shook her head with a smile. No, I only have the power of creation. In terms of cultivation base, I'm only at the Return to Void pinnacle stage. Oh, and Lin nodded in disappointment. Little Na was so adorable, so of course he couldn't lay a hand on her, and Lin turned his attention to another quest. This mission was related to moves, and it could be said to be the strongest move in the history of the system. It was a high-level war god spell. One had to realize that the 6 strikes of the war god and the origin energy of the netherworld were both intermediate rank battle god spell techniques. So one could imagine just how bad *SS these high rank battle god spell techniques were. Advanced war god secret technique. Dark immortal transformation. Condition to obtain the secret technique. Obtain the original skeleton of the heavenly true immortal and consume it. When Enlin saw the name of the heavenly true immortal's essence skeleton, he was dumbfounded. What the hell? Extraterrestrial true immortal? Does such a thing exist on the Tai Chu continent? He didn't think much of it at the time, but he wanted to know more about it now. Enlin thought about it for a while and decided that the Celestial Arch was probably the most familiar with the most powerful beings related to immortals. He already stood at the pinnacle of the Celestial Court, so he should know something about this. With this in mind, Enlin dialed the Celestial Thearch's voice transmission talisman. Hello, War God of the Celestial Court. What good news do you have for me? The Celestial Arch asked with a warm and enthusiastic smile. Enlin's battle in the Dark Marshlands had rocked the entire continent. He and the 4-9 Immortal sect were renowned across the entire continent. At the same time, as the War God of the Celestial Court, he had indirectly promoted the Celestial Court. At the very least, the Celestial Court's prestige and status on the continent had been elevated to a whole new level. The Celestial Arch knew that Enlin was a stock with immense potential, but he didn't think that his stock price would skyrocket so quickly. It had only been a few years, and the Celestial Court was already proud of him. Celestial Arch, I have a question for you. Do you know what a heavenly true immortal is? Enlin asked. What heavenly true immortal? The Celestial Arch faltered slightly. Heavenly true immortal, Enlin repeated. Heavenly true immortal? The Celestial Arch chuckled. Enlin, I'm serious. The Celestial Arch could tell from Enlin's tone that he wasn't joking, and he began to ponder this question. After a short while, he replied, I do have some recollection of this. I think I saw this title on a certain ancient plaque in the ancient Tai Chu realm 1,000,000 years ago. Enlin drew a sharp intake of breath. That long ago? The Celestial Arch replied. It is indeed a very long time ago. If you didn't bring it up, I would have almost forgotten about this title. Heavenly, true, immortal. What a title. What do you mean? Enlin asked with excitement welling up in his heart. The Celestial Arch chuckled. Everyone knows that after the Tao integration stage, one will be able to fuse their Tao with heaven and earth, thereby allowing them to live as long as heaven and earth, and their lifespans are close to limitless. But no matter what, they are still going to die, and this is why Tao integration stage super mighty figures have fallen. Could it be that the heavenly true immortal is different? Enlin's heart jolted with shock. Of course it's different. The heavenly true immortal transcends beyond the 3 realms and does not exist within the 5 elements. Even if heaven and earth were to collapse and the sun and moon were to perish, it would still be able to exist for an eternity, the Celestial Arch replied. Enlin was given a fright. Is there really such a bad *SS person in this world? The Celestial Arch heaved a faint sigh. I'm not sure. There are only a few fragments left on the ancient plaque, and I could only glean some general information from those fragments. In any case, the heavenly true immortal is at least on the same level as Nuwa, or perhaps even higher. Enlin, in that case, the system's mission was no longer a question of difficulty. It was a question that he didn't even dare to think about. How was he supposed to complete such a monstrous mission? Obtain the essential remains of the heavenly true immortal? He probably wouldn't even be able to see a single hair on the heavenly true immortal's body. That's all I know about the heavenly true immortal. There is a hint of yearning in the Celestial Thearch's voice as he said, perhaps those legendary immortals are the ones we're looking for. That's right. Enlin sighed with emotion. That was indeed the direction he was looking for. He still had to eat the bones of the legendary immortal. Enlin ended the voice transmission with a dejected expression. After learning about the system's mission, he realized just how difficult the system's mission was. It was the equivalent of issuing a mission that had not been issued at all. Thankfully, there was no punishment for this type of mission. Otherwise, and Lin would become a eunuch or impotent for hundreds of thousands of years. Wait, why would he become a eunuch or impotent? And Lin's body shuddered, and he hurriedly tossed this accursed thought out of his mind. This damned subconscious was intolerable. Chapter 1428. At the moment, the system only had 3 missions, and none of them were easy. And Lin could only set aside the system to deal with more important matters. He gathered all of the higher-ups of the 4-9 Immortal sect for a meeting. Bai Ling wore a white lab coat and used a holographic projection to provide an explanation. The 4-9 Immortal sect has already sold all of the cultivation resources that the sect leader brought back from the Divine Source continent to all of the sects and business tycoons on the continent, and we've received a total of 356,110,000 spirit stones in total. And Lin nodded with a smile. Now that we have sufficient funds, what do you all think about my proposal? I second the motion. Su Xiaolan immediately voted in favor of the motion. Money is meant to be spent. I've been waiting for this day for a long time. I agree. Lu Qianhuan chimed in with a wide grin. Our 4-9 Immortal sect has already become the 5th sect in the Kingdom of the 9 States, so we have to live up to our reputation. I also agree. Xianyuan Chung smiled. The day I've been dreaming of is finally here. Su Qianyun's eyes shimmered with anticipation. Immediately afterward, Tina, Tobias, Bryce, and Xiao Zhe also expressed their support. And Lin's proposal received unanimous approval. And Lin slapped his hands onto the table with anticipation and excitement etched on his face. All right, then let's officially start the sect's optimization and reconstruction project. We'll get the Grandmaster Construction Cultivator to come out and do it seriously. An indescribable sense of excitement appeared on everyone's faces upon hearing this. Thinking back to when they were building a new sect, they were looked down upon by the Grandmaster Construction Cultivator and Holy Lord Tion due to their lack of financial resources. In the end, they could only swallow the humiliation and choose a random 3 million Spirit Stones project. At that time, they had a dream in their hearts. One day, they would make the Grandmaster Construction Cultivator kneel before them and beg them to take this project seriously. Now, they had already fulfilled half of their dreams, and they finally had a chance to take this Grandmaster Construction Cultivator seriously. This was a day worthy of celebration. Pitter-patter, firecrackers were set off outside the 4-9 Immortal sect. The sect master led a group of pavilion masters to beat gongs and drums outside the door. They were beaming with joy and pride. A confused expression appeared on Ada's face as she softly asked, "Pavilion Master Tobias, what is Lin doing? Why is he so happy? I heard that they're going to renovate the sect, but I don't know why they're so happy." Tobias was a newcomer, and he was also quite confused. Behind them were dozens of core disciples from various pavilions. The disciples were also dumbfounded as they looked at the pavilion masters, who had completely collapsed. They didn't know what was wrong with them today. Why was Prince Charming Xianyuan blowing the trumpet? His image was ruined. There was also Goddess Su, who was beating her drums excitedly under the moonlight. As for Goddess Xiaolan, she was the mighty successor of the Vermilion Bird, but she kept throwing holy flames into the sky like fireworks. That was way too cheap after a heated celebration in advance. And Lin smashed the white jade with a heroic expression. "Grandmaster Construction Cultivator, get out here." All the disciples jumped in fright. Was this summoning an enemy? Bang! The white jade was shattered. A piece of information proliferated throughout heaven and earth. Everyone looked up into the sky with anticipation on their faces, as if they were waiting for something. Not long after that, crack! A crack suddenly appeared in the air above the grassland. A woman in a short red dress with a pair of long, snowy white legs emerged from the crack with a kick. She looked at Lin with a charming smile on her face. "Oh, the renowned sect leader Lin, what business do you have with me?" The woman also wore a short V-neck short-sleeve shirt. Not only did she have a sexy, curvaceous waist, but she also had a strong sense of professionalism, giving onlookers a sense of excitement. That's right, she was the Grandmaster Lin wanted to get serious with. Tui, she was a Grandmaster Construction Cultivator. Some of the disciples drew a sharp intake of breath upon seeing her chest for the first time. And Lin chuckled coldly. What business do you have with me? He made his way over to the Grandmaster Construction Cultivator, and his storage ring flashed. Rumble. A huge number of spirit stones fell to the ground like a mountain, causing the ground to tremor violently. All the disciples' mouths gaped open as they stared blankly at the glowing green crystals under the sun. There were as many of them as a mountain, and all the disciples' hearts were pounding as if they were free. I can swear that I've never seen so many spirit stones in my life. How many spirit stones is this? It has to be over 100 million, right? Wrong. It's several hundred million. Almost all of the disciples had the same question in their minds. What was sect leader Enlin trying to do? Enlin turned to the Grandmaster Construction Cultivator, and sure enough, he saw a hint of shock on her face, which made him feel extremely elated. Grandmaster Construction Cultivator, I've made a fool of myself. I only managed to collect 300 million spirit stones after 2 to 3 years. I want to make the sect a little more beautiful, so I wanted you to come here and help me with some renovations. 300 million spirit stones should be enough, right? Enlin asked with a nonchalant expression. The Grandmaster Construction Cultivator's lips twitched slightly. I already told you that 300 million spirit stones is the price for a serious renovation. Oh, I see. Is your serious renovation really that cheap? All right, then let's get serious and make our sect a little better. At the very least, it has to be comparable to one of the 4 great sects. And Lin chuckled. The veins on the Grandmaster Construction Cultivator's forehead bulged. Why do I feel like beating someone up? She took a deep breath to force herself to calm down. And Lin was ecstatic. He loved to see the Grandmaster Construction Cultivator get angry, but there was nothing she could do about it. You look down on me because I didn't have any money yesterday, but I can also look down on you with a huge sum of money today. Not only Enlin, but even Xiao Zhe, Su Xiaolan, and Xian Yuancheng were feeling extremely elated. This was a day for them to hold their heads up high. The Grandmaster Construction Cultivator waved a hand, and the mountainous pile of spirit stones in front of her was stowed away into her storage ring. A serious renovation will require all of my time and energy, and I'll need to do a lot of preparatory work as well. I'll complete all of these preparatory work within a month. Seeing as she was going to get serious, she wasn't going to slack off. She was going to give it her all. All right, thank you for your hard work, Ms. Construction Cultivator. And Lin smiled. He wasn't surprised by the preparation time of the Grandmaster Construction Cultivator. After all, they were going to build a sect that could rival the 4 great immortal sects that had existed for tens of thousands of years. How could it be compared to something that could be casually made in a day? Wait for my news. I'll be making preparations with Holy Lord Tian first. The Grandmaster Construction Cultivator waved her hand in farewell. Go, big sister Sinew. I hope you won't disappoint me. And Lin said with a buoyant smile. The Grandmaster Construction Cultivator pursed her lips and harumphed lightly before tearing open a spatial rift and departing. After the departure of the Grandmaster Construction Cultivator, the development of the 4-9 Immortal sect returned to normal as they waited for the Grandmaster Construction Cultivator to arrive again. Who would have thought that the Grandmaster Construction Cultivator wouldn't come? But an unexpected guest would arrive. Chapter 1429. And Lin was cultivating his new spell technique by the lake. Dabai immediately rushed over with excitement in his voice. Big brother, and there's a very special guest who wants to visit Woof. What kind of guest is this? You're drooling. And Lin wore a disdainful expression. You'll know once you go take a look. It's a super special guest. Woof. Dabai was extremely excited. Who is it? Why are they being so mysterious? And Lin looked at Dabai with a suspicious expression before riding Dabai toward the front hall. Soon, he saw many beautiful women. They were a group of young ladies dressed in light blue dresses. Their skin was as white as snow, and they were as pure as ice. All of them wore friendly, yet timid smiles upon seeing Enlin. Enlin drew a sharp intake of breath upon seeing this group of beautiful women. There were a dozen or so powerful snow maidens standing in front of him, The Snow Maidens had barged into the kingdom of the 9 states to visit him. What were they trying to do? And Lin's heart jolted with shock, but his expression remained calm and collected. He could no longer maintain his composure when a beautiful woman in a white priestess robe made her way toward him. Shangguan, you're here too. And Lin let loose a cry of surprise. The woman wore a faint smile on her face as she bowed slightly toward Lin. Snow Maiden High Priestess Shangguan pays her respects to sect leader Lin. And Lin faltered slightly upon hearing the term High Priestess, but he didn't say anything. At his level, even if the High Priestess were to come here in person, he wouldn't be too affected by her presence. The only thing that made him sigh with resignation was the fact that Shangguan, who was willing to give her everything for the Vermilion Bird sect, had chosen to become a Snow Maiden in the end. Please take a seat, Miss Shangguan. And Lin smiled. Shangguan sat down gracefully with a hint of elegance on her face. We're sorry for intruding upon your sect. As for the issue of safety, we've already submitted a report to the Celestial Court, and the Celestial Arch has granted us permission to travel to the 4-9 Immortal sect in person. And Lin's expression shifted slightly. Even though the Kingdom of the 9 States and the Snow Maidens had chosen a temporary truce due to the changes in the Holy Glacial Lands, the Kingdom of the 9 States and the Snow Maidens had decided to call a truce. But subconsciously, they still treated each other as enemies. Now, the Celestial Arch was willing to let the Snow Maidens into the Kingdom of the 9 States. This was quite novel. All right, that's not a problem. You're welcome to stay at the 4-9 Immortal sect in the future. After all, we're all family. And Lin raised an eyebrow at Shangguan with a knowing expression. How dare you? How dare you take liberties with our High Priestess? A return to Void Stage, Snow Maiden Mighty figure roared with rage. That's enough, Yanhua. Sect leader Lin was only joking. Shangguan said with an enraged expression as a rare blush appeared on her face. No, I'm serious. And Lin said with a serious expression. Shangguan, Yanhua. All of the Snow Maidens were enraged. Wasn't Lin trying to steal their High Priestess right in front of them? I'm actually here to ask sect leader Lin for a favor. Shangguan paused momentarily before speaking in an indifferent voice. What is it? Go ahead. A friendly smile appeared on Lin's face as he summoned a dozen or so purple spirit fruits through spell techniques before distributing them to all of the Snow Maidens. Each and every one of these spirit fruits was quite valuable. All of the Snow Maidens were a little flattered, and they didn't know whether they should accept them or not. What kind of person would entertain guests with spirit fruits? This was way too extravagant. Here's a small token of my appreciation. It must have been difficult for all of you to come all the way here. A warm smile appeared on Lin's face, as if the Snow Maidens standing before him were not enemies, but rather good friends from afar. Shangguan immediately extended a respectful salute. Thank you, sect leader Lin. All of the other Snow Maidens also extended respectful salutes before accepting the spirit fruits. Some of them were touched, while others were quite uneasy. Yanhua was feeling even more conflicted. She was the leader of the Holy Palace, but she had never treated her subordinates so well before. The Snow Maidens were already quite poor, and now that they had lost their homes due to war and disaster, spirit fruits were even more precious to them. All of the Snow Maidens present were of high social status, but some of them might not even have a single spirit fruit in their entire storage ring. And Lin could tell from the expressions on the Snow Maidens' faces that they had been through a rough time recently. He was naturally not going to sympathize with them, but he wasn't going to celebrate either. Instead, he turned to Shangguan with a concerned expression. Sister Shangguan, what can I do for you? The Snow Maidens had obviously sent Shangguan here because they were aware of the relationship between him and Shangguan, and they were hoping that she would be more amicable. And Lin was also quite curious. What could make the proud Snow Maidens lower their heads and beg for help from their enemies? Shangguan nodded slightly before turning to Lin with a pair of warm, clear eyes. Then I'll get straight to the point. The Snow Maidens are currently facing the threat of extinction, and we would like to ask for your help. And Lin couldn't help but burst into laughter. Ask for my help? Let me finish first. A beseeching expression appeared on Shangguan Yi's face. We'll definitely give you a satisfactory reward. Go on, and Lin replied. About a year ago, many of the snow maidens were killed or injured by the relentless barrage of snow mountains. Do you still remember? Shangguan Yi asked. I do, and Lin's interest was piqued a little. In the end, the living being that through the snow mountains came to your celestial court and was killed by your celestial court, right? Shangguan Yi stared at Enlin. Enlin's eyes narrowed slightly. I recall that everyone in the celestial court has sworn Dao heart vows to keep this a secret. How do you know about this? Shangguan Yi replied honestly. Our great empress detected this with her divine eye of the ice matriarch. Not only that, but she also knows that you were the one who killed the living being that through the snow mountains. And Lin heaved a forlorn sigh. I'm really sorry to have shown you how bad *SS I am. Shangguan, fame was the bane of men, and fattiness was the bane of men. And Lin had finally become a bad *SS for once. But even his enemies had come to him for help. What the hell was going on? Shangguan Yi paused momentarily before continuing. Recently, our snow maidens have been targeted by another terrifying enemy. Its power is similar to that of the mysterious living being that through the snow mountains. Our snow maidens are no match for it, and our entire tribe is in danger of being wiped out. Another one? And Lin's expression also shifted. He knew what that kind of living being represented. It was a being manifested from the heavenly Tao and wielded the paramount power of laws. Normal snow maidens were naturally no match for it. Even the Tao integration stage, snow, maiden empresses would find it difficult to deal with. A thought suddenly occurred to Enlin, and he asked nervously, It's not going to attack the celestial court after bullying you, right? Just like the heavenly wind god who threw the snow mountains. Shangguan Yi shook her head. It has set a countdown timer for our entire tribe. If we don't do something, we won't be able to live for more than 10 days. And Lin, Chapter 1430, Extinction Countdown? What the hell is that? And Lin asked with a curious expression. Shangguan Yi replied with a grave expression. It's a mysterious power that has been branded into the minds of all Snow Tribe living beings. When the time is up, all of us will die. And Lin's brows furrowed slightly. How do you know that all of you will die when the time is up? Maybe it's just scaring you. Or maybe you'll suddenly become ugly when the time is up, or something else. Wouldn't that be even more terrifying? Yanhua let loose a cry of surprise. Shangguan, to him. Shangguan Yi coughed lightly before glaring at Yanhua with a hint of resentment in her eyes. After Yanhua fell silent, she continued. That's because there have been over 1,300 snow maidens who have experienced the exact same countdown. When the time is up, all of their vitality will abruptly disappear, and they will melt into puddles of snow water. Even the great empress can't save them. At first, everyone was just panicking, but we weren't in despair yet. But now, the exact same countdown has appeared in the minds of over 100 million snow maidens, and we're on the brink of collapse. There are still over 9 days left on the countdown. If we can't find a solution within this period of time, we're really going to be wiped out. Shangguan Yi paused momentarily before continuing. The great empress wanted to get rid of the countdown in her mind, but she sensed an extremely similar power coming from it. It was as if the countdown had been enshrouded by an absolute protective barrier that could keep out all powers in this world. It was almost identical to the barrier that enveloped the surface of the snow mountains. This is no longer a problem that we snow maidens can deal with. We have to find a powerful being who can break through this barrier and defeat that mysterious living being. Coincidentally, the strange phenomenon that had occurred in the celestial court reminded us of something. The great empress used her ice matriarch divine eye to investigate the matter, and she finally saw the savior who could save our entire tribe. Shangguan Yi turned to Enlin with anticipation in her eyes. The other snow maidens also turned to Enlin with pleading and helpless expressions on their faces. Enlin knew that there was no point in denying it now. He turned toward the snow maidens with a calm smile. All right, I won't deny that I'm bad *SS, but why should I save you? You should know that you almost killed me before. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that you are mortal enemies." Enlin looked at the snow maidens before him with a menacing expression. "If all of you die, the kingdom of the 9 states will have one less enemy. So, give me a reason why I should save you. If you're worried that we'll become your enemies, then we can all swear Dao heart vows to never harm a single person from the kingdom of the 9 states again." Yanhua interjected. A smile appeared on Enlin's face. "You guys were wiped out by that mysterious living being, but isn't the result the same for the kingdom of the 9 states? You've even gotten rid of all future troubles." Yanhua choked, and her eyes reddened. It was still very hurtful to hear someone mention the annihilation of the snow maidens in such a nonchalant manner. Shangguan pursed her lips and turned to Enlin. "As long as you're willing to save us and allow our tribe to continue to exist, we're willing to do anything." All of the snow maidens were grief-stricken upon hearing this. They didn't say anything. It was clear that they were already mentally prepared for this to happen. This was the will of the great empress and the high priestess. "What do you mean by everything?" Enlin was a little hesitant. "The power and treasures of our entire tribe will all belong to you. You will be our leader from now on." Shangguani raised her golden eyes to look at Enlin with tears welling up in her eyes. "But please leave some dignity for our tribe and treat them as living beings." All of the snow maidens lowered their heads. Some of them even gripped the corners of their clothes tightly as their bodies trembled uncontrollably. Enlin fell silent. He knew how much Shangguan and the snow maidens had to go through in order to make this decision, and he knew what kind of indignation and humiliation they had to endure. Who would have thought that the once powerful snow maidens would be reduced to such a pitiful state? Enlin heaved a forlorn sigh. All of the snow maidens' expressions darkened upon hearing this. Some of them were already sobbing uncontrollably as they thought back to their past experiences. A sudden calamity forced them to leave their homeland and engage in incessant battles. For a piece of land, they would even stain the entire opposite shore realm with the blood of the snow maidens. Now, a calamity had suddenly befallen them. What had they done to deserve such a terrifying calamity? Enlin didn't look at the snow maidens' expressions. Instead, he turned to Shangguani. "Tell me, why are you doing this for the snow maidens? I'm also a snow maiden, and I also have a death timer." "I don't want to die," Shangguani replied. "I want to hear the truth." Enlin was a little enraged. He knew that this was a woman who was willing to give up her life to save a fellow disciple, even though she had been given the cold shoulder, so she wasn't afraid of death. A conflicted expression appeared on Shangguan Yi's face, and she paused momentarily before a wry smile appeared on her face. "All right, Enlin, I'll tell you the truth. Priestess Stone, you can't tell me. Have you forgotten what you promised the great empress?" All of the higher-ups of the snow maidens' expressions shifted drastically upon hearing Shangguan Yi's words. A comforting smile appeared on Shangguan Yi's face. "Don't worry, I know what kind of person Enlin is. He won't hurt me," she continued in a soft voice. "I am actually the reincarnation of the Ice Matriarch and the hope of the Snow Maiden Tribe's revival. I've known this ever since the Ice Matriarch's soul aura was awakened within my body. As the Snow Matriarch, my body, my blood, and my soul won't allow me to stand by and watch as their tribe is wiped out." Enlin was shocked. He clearly didn't think that Shangguan would have such an identity. Shangguan flipped her hand over, and a triangular crystal appeared in her palm. The crystal exuded an extremely gentle blue light, and it shimmered as if it were a living being. "This is the heart of the Ice Matriarch, and it's also my heart." Shangguan Yi's brows furrowed slightly as she held onto Enlin's hand before spreading it open, and the crystal fell into Enlin's palm. A smile appeared on her face. "Now, my life is also yours. Please save us." Enlin was a little dazed. He could sense that the crystal before him was connected to Shangguan Yi's life. Initially, the great empress and the high priestess had only sent Shangguan Yi here as a gesture of goodwill. However, he didn't think that they would send the most important member of the Snow Maiden tribe here. The patriarch of the Snow Maiden tribe was begging Enlin with her life. All of the snow maidens were already sobbing uncontrollably. They hadn't asked Shangguan Yi to give the heart of the ice matriarch to Enlin. Only now did they realize just how far Shangguan Yi would go to save her entire tribe. She was betting her everything on this man. Chapter 1431. Enlin, what else do you want us to do for you to help us? Tears welled up in Shangguan Yi's eyes. Tell us, and we'll do our best to satisfy you. Enlin fell silent again as he stared blankly at the triangular crystal in his hand. How about this? I can help you. He heaved a forlorn sigh. All of the snow maidens were elated to hear this, and they turned to Enlin with anticipation in their eyes. But I have to ask someone for their permission first. I can only do this if she agrees, Enlin said with a firm expression. Shangguan Yi's heart jolted with shock. Who could be so powerful that Enlin had to ask for his permission? Could it be some reclusive, mighty figure? You guys wait here for me. Enlin drifted away. All right, I'll wait for you. Shangguan Yi nodded obediently. Within the main pavilion of the Flame Pavilion. Xiaolan, what do you think? Enlin asked with a fawning expression. A dejected expression appeared on Su Xiaolan's face. Who would have thought that Sister Shangguan Yi's true identity would be the ice matriarch of the Snow Maidens? There's no turning back now. She's embarked on a completely different path from us, after all. There are many things in this world that could force people to walk a completely different path without any hesitation. She couldn't make them stay, nor could she. Enlin smiled. How is that a completely different path? They can promise me anything. I could just ask Sister Shangguan Yi to come back to the Vermilion Bird sect. They can promise you anything? Su Xiaolan raised an eyebrow. She felt like this was not a simple matter. Enlin immediately replied, but I won't make them do anything. I'll make them swear a Dao heart vow to never harm a human race again, then use them as my subordinates. Su Xiaolan nodded and heaved a forlorn sigh. All right, but let's not force Sister Shangguan Yi to do anything. After all, you can't force her to do anything. Xiaolan, you agree? Enlin suddenly became excited. Su Xiaolan poked Enlin's forehead with a slender finger. There are so many snow maidens listening to you all of a sudden, so don't you dare try anything funny. Enlin wore a serious expression. Don't you know what kind of person I am? How would I know what kind of person you are behind the scenes? Su Xiaolan pouted. By the way, if you think you can't beat the enemy in this battle, then don't fight. She thought to herself for a moment before gripping tightly onto Enlin's hand. Neither the lives of the entire Snow Maiden race nor Sister Shangguan Yi's life are as important as yours. Understand? Su Xiaolan initially didn't want Enlin to battle that strange living being. She knew what that kind of living being entailed. It was a being that was at least on the same level as the heavenly wind god. Just one of those terrifying beings had almost wiped out the celestial court. If it weren't for the fact that this matter concerned the safety of the entire human race, and that Enlin possessed the power to repress that kind of living being, she would never allow Enlin to take such a risk. Enlin kissed Su Xiaolan's forehead with a smile upon seeing her concerned expression. Don't worry, I'll run away as soon as things go south. I'll definitely prioritize my own safety above all else. Su Xiaolan nodded with relief upon hearing Enlin's promise. After receiving Su Xiaolan's approval, Enlin sent a voice transmission talisman to the Celestial the Arch to brief him on the situation. The Celestial the Arch expressed that there were no issues, but he had one request, which was that all of the Snow Maidens who had participated in the battle against the human race should be imprisoned and punished. Enlin relayed the Celestial Thearch's request to Shangguan Yi. Shangguan Yi immediately expressed that there were no issues and that she would abide by their arrangements. Thus, Enlin formed a temporary alliance with the Snow Maidens. All of the Snow Maidens present burst into tears, as if they had just completed an extremely important mission. Enlin immediately told them to stop crying. Otherwise, if outsiders were to see them, they would think that he had done something evil to these beautiful Snow Maidens. Enlin, don't you want my heart of the ice matriarch anymore? Shangguan Yi held an extremely intricate and dreamy triangular ice crystal in her hands as she looked up at him with her golden eyes. With the heart of the ice matriarch in your possession, No snow maiden will dare to do anything to you. And Lin shook his head with a smile. Want to have the same effect if I make you swear Tao heart vows? Besides, I don't have a habit of taking other people's hearts. Xiaolan's heart is enough for me. Shangguan Yi faltered slightly upon hearing this, before a knowing smile finally appeared on her face. Her smile was as pure and beautiful as a snow lotus. She looked at Lin with anticipation in her eyes. Sister Xiaolan, I wish you all the best. I hope I can live to witness your wedding. Don't worry, I've promised to help you, so I'll do my best to keep you alive. And Lin nodded with an earnest expression. Let's go. He didn't bring anyone with him this time. After all, this was an opponent that even a Tao integration stage super mighty figure couldn't handle, so it wouldn't matter how many people he brought with him. Right at this moment, the space around the 4-9 immortal sect was torn open again. A graceful man in a golden and white imperial robe appeared before Lin with a warm smile on his face. Mr. Lin, I'll come with you. Celestial Arch, why are you here? Lin let loose a cry of surprise. Shangguan Yi and the Snow Maidens all extended respectful salutes upon seeing the newcomer. Haha, I just want to collect some data. You know who I am, so I have to understand things like this in order to better complete my mission. The Celestial Arch smiled, and Lin nodded in agreement upon hearing this. Shangguan Yi and the others naturally didn't dare to disagree. In other words, time was of the essence, and they could do whatever they wanted. Thus, Lin, the Celestial Arch, and the Snow Maidens tore open space and traveled toward the border of the opposite shore realm in the southwestern region of the Holy Glacial Lands. This was where the Snow Maidens were temporarily residing, and it was also where the strange events had taken place. Speaking of which, Shui Zhantian is still in the Holy Glacial Lands, right? I wonder how he's doing now. And Lin suddenly thought of his adorable beast pet as he traveled through space, and he was a little concerned. The current Holy Glacial Lands was not a good place to be. The environment here was far more hostile than it had been in the past, and there were countless perilous zones and perilous zones. Even to return to Void stage, mighty figures of the Tai Chu continent were extremely wary of this place. At this moment, within the Holy Glacial Lands. Wah, Big Sister Long, I'm a lonely little ball of fur with no one to rely on. Please have mercy and take me with you. The little ball of fur had large blue ripples in its eyes, and it flapped its little wings before pouncing onto a woman's chest. You clearly have a master, and I can sense the power of the contract from your body. Stop bothering me. The beautiful and heroic woman picked up the ball of fur on her chest with a disgruntled expression. I'm going to hit you if you keep this up. The dragon tribe servants behind her immediately couldn't bear to see this. Ancient Dragon Empress, please don't hit it. This little animal is so adorable. Why are you hitting it? Chapter 1432. The Ancient Dragon Empress was a little depressed. She had only just progressed to the Tao integration stage and hadn't even had a chance to hold a tribe celebration, but an adorable snowball-like living being suddenly approached her. It insisted that they were the same kind of people and that it wanted to recognize her as its master. If it weren't for the fact that this snowball-like living being was far too adorable, she would have flattened it with a slap a long time ago. So you're going to follow me, right? The Ancient Dragon Empress asked with a resigned expression. I, Shui Zhantian, am a man of my word. If I say I'm going to follow you, I'll definitely follow you. The little snow monster replied with a serious expression. That's right. It was none other than Shui Zhantian, who had been attracted by the changes taking place in the Holy Glacial Lands. All right then, establish a beast pet contract with me. The Ancient Dragon Empress heaved a forlorn sigh. She wasn't an adorable little girl. Instead, she was the leader of the evil dragons, but it wasn't a bad thing to have such an adorable pet to hug. Shui Zhantian nodded and was just about to agree. All of a sudden, the image of a tall and mighty man who looked as if he were going to crush the heavens appeared in his mind. That man was also a being that he yearned to pursue. Even though he hadn't progressed to the Tao integration stage yet, his heaven-defying, heaven-crushing, and heaven-crushing aura was emanating from his body, and he was completely mesmerized. Let's not rush things. I think we should start off as friends and slowly build up our relationship. How about that? big sister dragon tribe. Shui Zhantian looked up at the ancient dragon empress with an adorable expression. The ancient dragon empress didn't mind. Up to you. Having such an adorable creature to keep her company during this long journey was quite a good thing. Heavy snow fell. Tens of thousands of dragon tribe cultivators followed behind her on their long and arduous journey. A series of dragon-like footprints were left in the snow before being buried by the snow. After a short while, the ancient dragon empress raised her head to look at a ball of golden light in the distance, and a smile finally appeared on her face. We're almost there. They were heading toward the heaven-crushing sex base, the land of eternal light. Opposite Shore Realm, at the Snow Maiden's temporary residence, a pitch-black crack split open in the sky and extended. A snowy white hand then tore open the rift. One by one, figures began to emerge from the cracks. Down below, hundreds of thousands of snow maidens had already gathered on a vast expanse of silvery white land. They bowed in unison and yelled in unison. The Snow Maidens welcomed sect leader Enlin, High Priestess Shangguan, and the Celestial Arch of the Kingdom of the Nine States. Enlin was shocked by the formation in front of him. Shangguan Yi's smile did not falter in the slightest, as if she was already used to scenes like this. Everyone, please rise. Sect leader Enlin is our hope, so you must fulfill your promise to him. Yes. Hundreds of thousands of snow maidens yelled in unison. All of the snow maidens looked up at Enlin with scorching curiosity in their eyes. This was the first time that Enlin had ever been the center of so many beautiful women's attention. However, he had already developed a certain level of resistance due to the fact that he had been worshipped by so many beautiful women in the Divine Source continent. As such, he maintained a nonchalant expression. The Snow Empress and the current High Priestess, Mengji, also came to welcome them. Their expressions didn't change much at the sight of the Celestial Arch. Instead, they all turned to look at Enlin. The Great Empress wore a blue muslin dress, accentuating her lithe and graceful figure. She bowed deeply to Enlin with an apologetic expression on her face. I'm truly sorry for everything that I've done to you in the past. If you have any grievances that you haven't vented, you can come and find me after this tribulation is over. Mengji was also looking at Enlin with a complex expression. Ever since the battle at the Vermilion Bird sect, Enlin had foiled her plans over and over again, and had even used lightning to detonate her clothes. During the battle at the opposite shore realm, Enlin had helped her battle the Ghost Tribe mighty figure, and she had also helped Enlin escape from the Great Empress. The two of them had interacted quite a bit. They had been enemies before, but they had also been temporary allies. Who would have thought that the man before her would progress so quickly? He had already become the hope that could save the entire Snow Maiden tribe. And Lin turned to the Great Empress and nodded. I'll deal with you in the future, but I hope that you can all complete the Dao Heart vow as soon as possible. Just submitting to the higher-ups of the Snow Maidens wasn't enough. He needed the entire Snow Maiden tribe to swear a vow that they would never harm the human race again. Only then would he be able to help the Snow Maidens without any worries. All right, I'll do that right away. The Great Empress agreed without any hesitation. There were over 100 million Snow Maidens, but the Great Empress could quickly relay instructions to the Snow Maidens and complete the vow in half a day. The Celestial Arch was responsible for overseeing the vow of the Snow Maidens, so Enlin didn't participate. Instead, he toured the Snow Maiden's temporary residence with Shangguan before taking a stroll around the treasure vault. Enlin wasn't going to be so thirsty. He was just going to take a stroll along the way. That's right, he was going to take a stroll along the way. All of the Snow Maidens lived in ice houses, and even the Imperial Palace was carved out of ice. It was extremely intricate and beautiful, and Lin felt as if he were walking through a world of ice and snow. There were all types of intricate ice sculptures, and not only were they extremely beautiful, they were also very creative. We Snow Maidens are the best at building houses. All of the houses here were built by us. Look at that palace over there. It took me 10 days to carve it out. That's where I live. Shangguan pointed to a pristine palace with a smile on her face as she led Lin onward. At this moment, she was much less intimidating, and she was much more approachable and approachable. And Lin felt as if he had returned to the Vermilion bird trial grounds to farm monsters with her. All of the houses here are made of ice. Don't you feel cold living here? And Lin asked. No, it's more comfortable when it's cool. Our constitutions are all like this. Feel our hands if you don't believe me. Shangguan extended a slender arm toward Lin, and Lin squeezed her hand to find that it was soft and smooth, but also a little cold. It was a very pleasant sensation to the touch. Snow maidens are very cold by nature, so we like to live in ice houses, Shangguan explained. And Lin's understanding of the snow maidens deepened once again. They continued onward until they arrived at the imperial palace. And Lin possessed the highest level of authority among the snow maidens, and he could go wherever he wanted. He could openly enter the imperial palace and observe the palace. To his surprise, the great empress' living quarters were not as extravagant as he had imagined. Everything was very simple. The floor was smooth, and there were simple ice decorations. The only thing worth paying attention to was the ice paintings on the walls. The paintings seemed to be depicting the story of the ice matriarch. The ice matriarch in the painting was peerless, regal, and cold, and she bore a slight resemblance to Shangguan. Shangguan stared at the woman in the painting with a slightly entranced expression, and she seemed to be thinking of something. And Lin and Shangguan wandered around before finally arriving at the treasure vault of the Snow Maidens. What a coincidence, the treasure vault. I'm a little curious to see what's in there, and Lin said. This is where we Snow Maidens store our treasures. I'll take you there, and you can take whatever you like. Shangguan smiled without any hesitation. All right, let's go have a look. And Lin repressed the excitement in his heart and pushed open the door. Chapter 1433. Shangguan opened the restriction, and Lin eagerly pushed open the heavy door. A burst of dazzling light appeared, and Lin's heart swayed slightly. And Lin was instantly astonished by the sight of the treasures behind the door. Did I open the door the wrong way? Should I close the door first before opening it again? And Lin muttered to himself. The wealth of the Snow Maidens had left him in awe and awe. It wasn't that there was too much, it was that there was too King little. There were only over 100 spirit pills and spirit plants scattered around, as well as a few dozen spirit tools. There were only 3 immortal rank pills and 2 immortal tools, and the rest were all miscellaneous items. Even spirit stones were only around 20 million, which wasn't even a fraction of the spirit stones in Lin's storage ring. And Lin did a rough calculation of the value of the treasures in the treasure vault to find that it was roughly equivalent to the combined wealth of a few return to Void Stage Mighty Figures, or 1 or 2 Dragon Tri Mighty Figures of the Return to Void Pinnacle Stage. One had to realize that this was the combined wealth of the entire Snow Maiden race. How could this be possible? And Lin stared at Shangguan with incredulity on his face. An awkward expression appeared on Shangguan Yi's face. Do you think it's too little? What do you think? And Lin's expression darkened. You're a first-rate power with a Dao integration stage, super mighty figure among your ranks. So how could your treasure vault be so shabby? A wry smile appeared on Shangguan Yi's face. The place where we Snow Maidens live is quite barren in terms of cultivation resources, so there's naturally nothing good here. Furthermore, the climate in the holy glacial lands has been drastically changing recently, and we have no home to return to, so we've been forced to venture toward the opposite shore realm, only to be evicted by the ghost tribe of the opposite shore realm. Whenever war breaks out between tribes, resources such as pills and weapons will be expended at a rapid rate, so these are the only things we have left. Shangguan pointed at the treasures before her with a smile. There aren't many treasures here, but we can give them all to you. If you take all of these, they should still be worth some money, right? Just take them as a token of our appreciation. Before Lin even had a chance to say anything, Shangguan offered to give all of these treasures to him. She was like a homeless and destitute girl who handed him the only piece of bread she had with a smile. To be honest, Tycoon didn't care about the bread, so he rejected it. I already said that I'm here to visit. What kind of person do you think I am? And Lin snorted coldly. Do you think I'm the kind of person who will be tempted by money? Shangguan, he faltered slightly upon hearing this. Was the scammer who had sold the frying pan to her for 1,000 spirit stones per piece of meat really not that kind of person? Let's go. And Lin took the initiative to leave the treasure house. He really had no interest in plundering such a poor and shabby treasure house again. Shangguan followed along behind Lin with a smile on her face as she looked at him. The two of them walked around the Snow Maiden's temporary residence, and all of the Snow Maidens were extremely respectful toward Lin and Shangguan. This was the first time that Lin had been treated so passionately by a Snow Maiden. In his mind, all of the Snow Maidens were icy beauties who were extremely disgusted by men and would freeze them into ice sculptures at the drop of a hat. However, as a grown man, he felt as if he were strolling through a brothel as he strolled through the core area of the Snow Maidens. All of the Snow Maidens were extremely enthusiastic, singing, dancing, and even serving him tea and fruits, as if they were afraid that they would upset Lin if they didn't do a good job. If all of you were this adorable in the past, then the people of the Kingdom of the Nine States wouldn't despise you so much. And Lin couldn't help but sigh. That's because you were able to save them. That's why they're so adorable. Shangguan immediately shattered Lin's fantasies. The two of them arrived at the weapon forging bench, where a man was chatting happily with Meng Ji. This was the first time that Lin had seen a man among the Snow Maidens, and it was an extremely handsome man at that. Lin recognized this man. Back at the 10,000 Spirits Immortal sect, Meng Ji had personally led a large group of people to rescue this man. At the time, he was still a newbie and was completely unable to influence the outcome of that battle. Apparently, this man was a cross-dresser who had disguised himself as a female in the Snow Tribe for many years without being discovered. Now, he could finally appear here as a man. And Lin sighed with emotion in his heart. The man immediately bowed respectfully at the sight of Lin. Chen Qinghang pays his respects to sect leader Lin. That's right, this man was once an exceptional prodigy of the 10,000 Spirits Immortal sect, Chen Qinghang. And Lin listened to Chen Qinghang's introduction, and his other name surfaced in his mind, Bing Fu. How could a cross-dresser not have a beautiful female name? Mr. Chen Qinghang, are you used to living here? A concerned smile appeared on Lin's face, as if he were a senior. Chen Qinghang nodded with a serious expression. It's a blessing to be able to be with someone I like, so of course I'm used to it. Meng Ji blushed involuntarily upon hearing this. Chen Qinghang continued, I've been promoting the Kingdom of the Nine States to the Snow Maidens for the past few years, so that they won't be so hostile toward the Kingdom of the Nine States, and I've already achieved some results. It's all right now. They've all vowed not to harm any humans in the Kingdom of the Nine States, so the Snow Maidens are no longer a threat to the Kingdom of the Nine States. And Lin smiled. Chen Qinghang, isn't it a little hurtful to deny the results of my ideological work with just one sentence? And Lin was a little dazed. In the past, he had to look up to Chen Qinghang, and he felt that Chen Qinghang and Meng Ji were a legendary couple. But now, he could earn Chen Qinghang's negative emotions without any scruples. After that, and Lin offered some words of consolation to Chen Qinghang before departing to continue his tour. Time slowly passed by, and Lin was a little tired, so he and Shangguan went to a secluded courtyard to drink some iced tea. The iced tea here was not iced red tea. Instead, it was a type of tea unique to the Snow Maidens. It was as pristine white as snow and resembled a willow leaf. Wisps of blue tea mist would rise up from the tea as soon as it was soaked in hot water, creating an extremely beautiful sight to behold. This was clearly a tea brewed with hot water, but it was so refreshing that one shuddered after taking a sip. It was as if one could expel all of the heat from one's body with just a single exhale. Shangguan was enjoying the tea with gusto, but Lin was trembling uncontrollably. The Snow Maidens liked the cold, but Lin didn't like it. However, drinking this kind of tea gave him a different kind of refreshing feeling, so he didn't mind it. 2 hours later, the Great Empress, the Celestial Arch, and High Priestess Meng Ji appeared before Lin again. The Celestial Arch spoke first. All of the Snow Maidens have sworn their vows through my omniscient eye. You can begin the next step of your plan. And Lin heaved a sigh of relief upon hearing this, before turning to Shangwan. Let me see your death timer. I'll see if I can undo it for you. Chapter 1434. Undoing the death timer? Both the Great Empress and the High Priestess were extremely excited to hear this. Shangwan Yi's expression became even more vibrant as hope reignited in her eyes. If Enlin really did have the ability to undo the spell technique, then the Snow Maidens would be able to avoid extinction. At this moment, the Celestial Arch stepped forward. Enlin, there's something I want you to understand. Once you have the ability to dispel this death countdown, the enemy will be able to sense it, and there's a very good chance that it will be able to track you down. Enlin chuckled. That's exactly what I'm looking for. I'm just worried that it won't come. Otherwise, I'll have to dispel the death countdowns of over 100 million Snow Maidens one by one, and I'll definitely be unable to do so in 10 days. The Celestial Arch didn't say anything else. He knew that Enlin was planning to kill that mysterious living being from the very beginning. If that living being really was a manifestation of a representative of the heavenly Tao, then this was actually the best choice for him. At the very least, all representatives of the heavenly Tao that had appeared were extremely hostile toward the human race. Seeing as that was the case, it was Enlin's job to kill them while they were still restricted by the great Tao of heaven and earth. This battle wasn't for the Snow Maidens. If it weren't for the fact that he had to protect his family and friends, as well as the human race, Enlin definitely wouldn't take this risk. The Celestial Arch stared at the white-robed young man with a slightly dazed expression. As the #1 paramount power in the Kingdom of the Nine States, the Celestial Court enjoyed supreme prestige among the human race. If the human race was in trouble, the Celestial Court would be the first power to step forward. As the war god of the Celestial Court, Enlin was worthy of his title as the war god of the Celestial Court. Not only was the war god of the Celestial Court the most powerful warrior in the Celestial Court aside from the 5 emperors, but he also had to understand what responsibility was and why he was fighting. It was quite clear that Enlin had fulfilled both of these requirements. The humans of the Kingdom of the Nine States were either cultivating, pursuing fame and fortune, living in peace and contentment, or laughing about the 4-9 immortal sect's meteoric rise. However, no one knew that the person that everyone had been talking about recently was now silently shouldering the heavy responsibility of protecting the human race. He stood at the forefront of the human race, facing battles that might very well cost him his life. With that in mind, the Celestial Arch relaxed, and a smile appeared on his face. Enlin, go ahead and do what you need to do. I'll stand guard for you. Enlin nodded with a solemn expression before standing in front of Shangwan Yi. What do you need me to do? Shangwan Yi was a little nervous. My divine sense will enter your mind. Don't resist. Enlin pressed his hand against Shangwan Yi's forehead. Shangwan Yi closed her eyes, and her eyelashes trembled lightly. Enlin could feel a cool yet delicate sensation on his hand, and at the same time, his divine sense had already entered Shangwan Yi's mind. The death timer was extremely glaring in her mind, and it was ticking away 1 second at a time. There was a projection of a skeleton around the timer, and he could sense an extremely terrifying aura of death emanating from the skeleton. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that anyone who slept with this skull on their head would have nightmares at night. However, the Snow Maidens were still able to remain so calm, even with such a thing in their minds. It had to be said that they were quite mentally stable. Perhaps it was because they had been through enough hardships in the past. Enlin set aside his distracting thoughts before extending his divine sense toward the death timer. However, just as his divine sense was about to make contact with the death timer, it was suddenly cut off by an invisible barrier. No matter how hard he tried, he was unable to penetrate the barrier, as if it were the will of the heavens that could keep all powers in this world at bay. Interesting. No wonder you said that this is the same type of living being as the heavenly wind god. This isn't a power that should exist in this world. Enlin chuckled lightly. Suddenly, a divine halo of wind appeared above his head, and a divine aura that stood proudly above the 9 heavens spread out. It was supreme and supreme, looking down on all living things. Regardless of whether it was the celestial arch of the celestial court or the great empress and high priestess of the snow maidens, all of their expressions shifted drastically. All of them could sense an irresistible power emanating from the death timer. This power. He's using the power of the heavenly wind god? The celestial arch murmured to himself. As expected, Enlin is the hope of our tribe. The beautiful eyes of the empress stared at the man in front of her. Her pure and flawless face was flushed with excitement. Enlin finally used his heavenly wind power again. He imbued his heavenly wind power into his divine sense, and he used the power of wind as a saber to strike the death timer. Sweat began to appear on Shangguan Yi's forehead, and her features paled slightly. She was clearly struggling to handle the power of Enlin's wind power, even though it wasn't targeted at her. The saber of wind power fell upon the invisible barrier and slowly tore it apart. Enlin's expression stirred upon seeing this. It really did work. The representatives of the heavenly Tao could interfere with one another. He didn't hesitate any longer. After slicing open the barrier, his powerful divine sense instantly destroyed the death timer and the projection of the skeleton in Shangguan Yi's mind. Boom! Shangguan Yi let loose a pain moan, and a cloud of black mist erupted from her body before disappearing into thin air. Her intricate features were a little pale, but her golden eyes opened at this moment as a relaxed smile appeared on her face. I did it! The great empress and the high priestess were both ecstatic to hear this. The celestial thearch's expression also eased slightly. The fact that Enlin was able to break through his opponent's power meant that he had the power to battle that mysterious living being. Thank you, sect leader Enlin, for saving our snow maidens from extinction. The great empress extended another grateful salute. I haven't even defeated that mysterious living being yet, so why are you thanking me so soon? Enlin smiled. If you can save our ice matriarch, then even if everyone else dies, our snow maidens won't truly perish, the great empress replied with a serious expression. It looked like the snow maiden entourage had already reported Shangguan Yi's identity to the great empress. Otherwise, the great empress wouldn't have revealed Shangguan Yi's identity so easily. The great empress gripped the air with one hand, and a smooth barrier of ice enshrouded the entire sky. Her voice spread throughout the entire snow maiden territory at this moment. The enemy is upon us. Everyone, prepare for battle. The formation was activated. The snow maidens were led by the 13 return to Void Stage Holy Palace leaders into the sky before forming a battle formation and keeping a close eye on their surroundings. Come on, let's continue to break the death timer. Enlin was afraid that his opponent wouldn't come, so he decided to continue to provoke her. Breaking through her spell technique was the best way to provoke her. The great empress and Meng Ji looked at each other before standing in front of Enlin. Enlin placed one hand on the great empress' forehead and the other on high priestess Meng Ji's forehead. Chapter 1435. His divine sense erupted forth with the paramount power of wind and instantly sliced through the barrier. At the same time, Enlin's divine sense also destroyed the power that had been planted in the great empress and Meng Ji's minds, leaving not a single trace behind. The great empress opened her eyes with astonishment on her face. What a miraculous power! Sect leader Enlin, she forced herself to stop halfway through her sentence. Everyone had their own secrets, and it wasn't a good idea to pry into someone else's secrets. The great empress felt like this man was very mysterious, and she really wanted to get closer to him. Enlin smiled at the great empress, as if he hadn't heard what she had just said. Summon a few more snow maidens. I don't believe that it won't come. The great empress immediately summoned a few more holy palace leaders. Enlin saw a few familiar faces among these snow maidens. For example, Su Jingxiang, Yanhua, and Rogu. They were all returned to Void Stage snow maidens that Enlin had met in the ancient Taichu realm. Enlin had been influenced by the Holy Mother's heart at the time, and he had saved them once. Su Jingxiang, Yanhua, and Rogu were all feeling extremely conflicted at this moment. They had been saved by Enlin again. Thank you, Enlin, Su Jingxiang said in a gentle voice as she looked at Enlin. Yen Hua pursed her lips. I have nothing to repay you with. I can only, and Lin immediately interjected, don't repay me with your body. Yen Hua choked on her words, and she glowered at Enlin. I'll repay you in my next life. Enlin heaved a sigh of relief upon hearing this. In all honesty, even though the snow maidens were very beautiful, they were too cold to hug. He wouldn't want them even if they offered themselves to him. He began to remove the death timer on Yen Hua and the others. The spell technique that the enemy had left on the snow maidens wasn't very powerful, and it could be easily broken by his heavenly wind power. The enemy probably didn't anticipate that the snow maidens would be able to use a similar power. It was also for this reason that Enlin was able to use the power of the heavenly wind god many times. However, he wasn't going to tire himself out. After saving one or two snow maidens, he rested for a while and swallowed a spirit pill to replenish his energy. The snow maiden's eyes widened at the sight of Enlin eating the spirit pill like it was candy. They really couldn't imagine the life of the rich. After a series of ferocious actions, the death countdowns of all the sacred palace masters were broken by Enlin. All of them expressed their gratitude toward Enlin, and their favorability level increased by leaps and bounds. Enlin thought to himself, if the system issued a mission for him to gain the affection of the snow maidens, he should be able to complete it immediately. Sigh, we've already deactivated a dozen or so death countdowns, but they still haven't arrived? Enlin swallowed a spirit pill and sighed in resignation. He still couldn't think of any way to uncover the culprit behind the scenes. He could only wait for the culprit to come out. However, the other party seemed to be able to keep his composure and had yet to show himself. Deactivating the death countdowns of the snow maidens one by one wasn't a solution either. There were over 100 million snow maidens, and Enlin would be exhausted to death if he had to deal with them one by one. However, there didn't seem to be any other way. Looks like this is an intelligent and cautious heavenly god manifestation. Enlin recalled the heavenly gods he had seen before. The heavenly god of sea chose to hide. The heavenly god of wind chose to be reckless. And the heavenly god of lightning chose to seduce others. Now, this unknown heavenly god was hiding like a teenage mutant ninja turtle. What could he do to provoke this heavenly god manifestation and make it come out? Enlin fell into deep thought. He called over another snow maiden and decided to study that barrier. Enlin's divine sense enshrouded the death countdowns as he used the power of the heavenly wind god to slowly slice open that barrier. He wasn't in a hurry to destroy that power. Instead, he enshrouded it with the power of the wind and carefully sensed its power before gently stirring it to tease it. The snow maiden's eyelashes trembled as she moaned. Enlin's brows furrowed slightly. The celestial arch, the great empress, and the others all wore expressions of anticipation and curiosity. Enlin suddenly discovered that if he attached a wind blade to his divine sense and slowly tore open the barrier, the power of the wind and the power of the barrier would either fuse or repel one another. This was a state where the two powers fused and repelled one another at the same time. It was very contradictory, but it was like the yin-yang symbol, mutually reinforcing and mutually annihilating one another. He tried to push the power in the direction of fusion. Not only did Enlin want to destroy that power, but he also wanted to absorb it as well. This was a process that was progressing very slowly. However, just as he was about to fuse that power with it, it was suddenly met with an extremely violent rejection. Enlin's expression darkened, but at the same time, he became even more excited. It was good that there was resistance and rejection. He was just worried that it wouldn't react at all. The more it struggled, the more excited Enlin became, the more he wanted to fuse with it. The most provocative thing he could do to that mysterious living being wasn't to destroy its spell technique. Instead, it was to fuse with and absorb its power. That would be the equivalent of rubbing its power against the ground, and no one would be able to tolerate that. Now, he could only hope that this living being manifested by the heavenly gods would have its own emotions. Only then would Enlin be able to do anything meaningful. and Lin exerted all of his strength and finally managed to absorb his opponent's power. An ancient and indestructible aura flowed into his body along with the power of the wind. This power, and Lin's heart was throbbing with excitement. For some reason, he felt like this power was even more terrifying than that of the heavenly wind god. They were both representatives of the heavenly Tao. So why was he feeling like this? Whoosh, all of a sudden, the clouds in the sky lit up with a golden light. A burst of mighty power tore through the massive ice barrier unleashed by the great Empress before descending from the sky. And Lin, look out! The celestial arch let loose a cry of surprise. He could sense that this power was hurtling toward Lin. And Lin's expression was completely unfazed as his divine tool, evil slaying sword, flew out from behind him and slashed toward the mighty power. A black light engulfed heaven and earth as an extremely profound sword projection tore through the power. The energy that had been split in two fell onto the ground, causing the hard ground to melt like butter. It created two cracks that were hundreds of miles long and were so deep that one couldn't see the bottom. The great Emperor's heart jolted with shock. If this power were to fall upon her, there was no way she would be able to defend herself. This was because this power was imbued with some kind of irresistible power, as if the two of them weren't even on the same level. A terrifying aura descended from the sky, as if a paramount god had descended upon this world. Many of the snow maidens raised their heads with expressions of shock and horror on their faces. All of the snow maidens in the sky turned pale with fright at the sight of this aura. At this moment, a white figure rose into the sky. All of the snow maidens felt an indescribable sense of security at the sight of the white figure, and their expressions of shock and horror faded significantly as they stared at the white figure with scorching light in their eyes. They knew that if there was anyone in this world who could contend with a god in the sky, then it had to be this man. He was the war god of the celestial court, the sect leader of the 4-9 immortal sect, Lin. Chapter 1436. And Lin looked up at the incessant rumbling in the sky. Boundless divine might descended from above, crushing down upon all living beings. However, this divine might didn't affect him in the slightest. Ever since he mastered the great divine might technique, no one dared to flex in front of him anymore. The clouds parted. A golden figure appeared in front of everyone. Her entire body was enshrouded in golden divine light, and she had the appearance of an extremely beautiful snow maiden. However, her body was semi-transparent, as if she were the most perfect piece of jade. The most eye-catching feature was the divine halo above her head. Golden light swirled incessantly, and it was so fast that Lin couldn't even catch a glimpse of it. If it weren't for the ripples around him, he wouldn't even have known that the divine halo could revolve. Lin sensed a familiar power from the divine halo. It was of a different element, but its essence was the same. This was undoubtedly another living being that had manifested from a heavenly god. However, he didn't know what kind of heavenly god this was. Just as Lin was feeling perplexed, the living being turned toward Lin, and a peculiar light suddenly appeared in its emotionless eyes. "You're the one who absorbed my power? What happened? Why are the wind and lightning in your hands?" The mysterious living being was both excited and perplexed. Lin blinked before replying. "They've acknowledged me and decided to bestow their heavenly god powers upon me." This living being was quite expressive. Perhaps he could have a good chat with her? Sure enough, the golden snow maiden fell silent, as if she were thinking about something. Moments later, the divine halo above her head suddenly glowed brightly before emitting a buzzing sound. She tapped the divine halo above her head with a shiny, golden finger. An ethereal and holy voice sounded, "Hey, Time, what's up? Light, I'm at the border of the Tai-Chu opposite shore realm. I discovered that someone has stolen the wind and lightning, so I came to report this to you. I wanted to kill him on the spot. What do you think?" The golden snow maiden asked. A voice sounded from within the divine halo. "He must die." Golden snow maiden, "Got it. And Lin, I haven't even tried to fool you yet, and you're already giving me a death sentence?" Say a few words to me first. However, time and light, could it be that they were the power represented by authority? Unlin suddenly panicked. The Tao of light and the Tao of time were extremely mysterious. Even among the various major powers, there were very few who could come into contact with this level of power. To think that the other party's authority was of such an attribute. It sounded like he wasn't someone to be trifled with. He could sense the killing intent radiating from the Golden Snow Maiden, and he immediately said, "Time, do you know why the wind and lightning have voluntarily allowed me to inherit their powers?" The Golden Snow Maiden remained expressionless, and it was as if she hadn't heard him at all. She formed a sword with one hand and slashed it toward Enlin. 10-year sword. The void fluctuated, and a golden sword pierced through the sky. The corners of Enlin's mouth twitched slightly, and he finally gave up on trying to bluff his way through. Instead, he raised his aura to its peak and activated origin energy of the Netherworld, Fire God Mode, Star Vein Divine Blast, and Triple Body Burst at the same time. He was able to feel the vicissitudes of time from the blade of the sword. That power had passed through the river of time and ceaselessly accumulated sword momentum. In the end, merely the sword chi that was emitted possessed the might to split mountains and split seas. The great Empress' expression shifted drastically, and she immediately yelled, "Get into formation and protect yourselves." Countless blue defensive barriers and spell formations began to appear. At this moment, the Golden Snow Maiden's 10-year sword had already descended. Enlin's expression remained calm, and he was just about to raise his evil-slaying sword to defend himself. However, the Sword of Light suddenly flashed past at a speed that was as fast as the speed of light. There was no earth-shattering explosion as he had imagined. The Golden Snow Maiden, or in other words, the Heavenly Time God, her sword strike was extremely terrifying, but it was as if it had never even appeared in the first place. All the Snow Maidens were dumbstruck, and they didn't know what had happened. However, Enlin's pupils contracted. His internal organs were rapidly deteriorating, and the vitality of every single cell in his body was rapidly diminishing to the point where they were even dying. He understood now. He knew what the death timer that had appeared on the Snow Maiden's body meant. That wasn't the power of death. Instead, it was the power of time. Time was used to end a living being's life. Through the implantation of a time seed, the target would immediately age and die as if they had lived for countless years. As long as the target hadn't transcended beyond all things, they wouldn't be able to escape the power of time. And Lin stared at the changes taking place within his body with shock and horror on his face. If it weren't for his extremely powerful life force, that sword strike would have most likely already killed him. He wasn't the only one who was astonished. The Heavenly Time God was also staring at Enlin with astonishment and confusion on her face. "Strange, why has my power been restricted so much? Why is it that your life force hasn't diminished in the slightest? It's as if it's been locked down." Enlin didn't know what she was talking about, and he gritted his teeth before pouncing toward the Heavenly Time God. The Heavenly Time God had severely wounded him with just one attack. He had to end this battle as quickly as possible. Otherwise, he would be exhausted to death sooner or later. The Heavenly Time God heaved a faint sigh at the sight of Enlin. "As expected, my power has been restricted far too drastically. If this were in the past, I would be able to determine life and death with a single glance." As she spoke, she stretched out her golden and slender palm and clenched it in the air. Time stopped. All of a sudden, heaven and earth fell silent. Everything in this world fell silent. Regardless of whether it was the Snow Maidens, the celestial arch, the plants and trees, the wind and clouds in the sky, everything was as still as a painting. Only the Heavenly Time God was still standing proudly in the heavens, exuding boundless divine light. Her eyes seemed to have seen through the passage of time. Regardless of whether they are powerful or weak, they are all as insignificant as dust particles in my eyes. In the face of time, everything in this world was insignificant. However, in the next instant, the man before her was still charging toward her. The man was completely out of place in this frozen world, but he was extremely similar to her. The silver-white flowing wind divine ring released a divine radiance above his head, and a protective barrier that isolated all power covered his entire body. A supreme aura spread out. The man who had sprang into action was none other than Enlin. After enduring the Heavenly Time God's 10-year sword, he knew that it would be difficult to defeat the Heavenly Time God in this world. So he immediately unleashed his heavenly wind power to enshroud his entire body. It was exactly because of this that he was able to evade the Heavenly Time God's technique. Heavenly Blade. Enlin hurtled toward the Heavenly Time God like a flaming meteor, appearing before her in the blink of an eye as his evil slaying sword, which was imbued with the heavenly wind power, slashed down. The Heavenly Time God was momentarily dazed by the oncoming Enlin, but during this split second of distraction, Enlin's heavenly blade had already sliced her body in half. Chapter 14:37. The blade projection sliced through the heavens and sliced through yin and yang. Heaven and earth, regardless of whether it was the Heavenly Time God or the earth, were all sliced in half. The still time suddenly began to flow again. Everyone was then greeted by the sight of Enlin slicing the Heavenly Time God in half. My God, what's going on? Did sect leader Enlin teleport? Great! He actually killed his opponent in one move. Our clan is saved. All of the snow maidens looked up at the battle in the sky with shock and awe in their eyes. However, the celestial arch and the great empress brows furrowed slightly upon seeing this. They felt like something was missing. Enlin was also very tense. He was just about to unleash a few dozen more sword strikes. A voice suddenly sounded. Time reversal. The two halves of the golden snow maiden that had been sliced in half suddenly began to merge back together as if they were being rewound. Then, the wound quickly healed, and her body became whole again. Enlin's heart jolted upon seeing this. He had finally unleashed his heavenly wind technique, but time reversal just like that? If time was reversed, then give me back the power I expended. Enlin discovered that this time reversal only affected herself and couldn't affect the outside world. However, this was already insane enough. He had finally slain the Heavenly Time God, only for her to return to her original state. How was he supposed to kill her then? Even though he said that, Enlin still continued to charge forward. He could only take a gamble. The Heavenly Time God had to expend a lot of power to reverse time, and that power couldn't be reversed. The Heavenly Time God spoke in an indifferent voice. As expected, you can still use the wind. Danger level, Heaven rank. You must be eliminated. Heavenly Blade. Enlin unleashed another sword strike. The Heavenly Time God extended a palm toward Enlin. Slow down. Whoosh. Enlin suddenly discovered that the speed at which he swung his sword had slowed down by 100-fold. Furthermore, at the same time, he felt like this was the speed that he was supposed to achieve after unleashing his full power. At this moment, the Heavenly Time God gripped the air, and a golden sword projection pierced through heaven and earth like a golden river surging through the heavens with no end in sight. This was an endless river of time. No one knew where it came from, and no one knew where it would end. Drowned in the ancient river of time, 100-year sword. The Heavenly Time God slashed her golden river toward Enlin, and the river surged through the air even faster than Enlin's sword. Move it! Move! Enlin had clearly used his power of wind to protect himself, but the power of time was omnipresent, and it was violently suppressing his wall of wind before disintegrating it. This was just like how Enlin had used the power of wind to slice through the Heavenly Time God's protective barrier. Now, the roles had been reversed, and Enlin was the one being crushed. Speed, I need speed now. Enlin took a deep breath, and the flowing wind divine ring above his head suddenly changed. Thunder rumbled, and a golden light frightened the soul. An explosive, swift, and supreme aura spread out. Stage Lightning Essence Cultivation Method. Lightning Essence Cultivation Method. Paramount golden void lightning revolved around Enlin's body, and he tore through the omnipresent power of time with extremely violent force. He was using the power of lightning that he had obtained from the refined golden void lightning. Lightning was the embodiment of speed and violence, so there was a chance that it could break through the heavenly time god's power of time in a short time. And Lin's speed increased explosively once again as the golden river surged toward him. His body flashed like lightning as he dodged in another direction, narrowly evading the golden river by a hair's breadth. Golden void, divine lightning. And Lin pointed a finger, and golden divine lightning tore through space before roaring through the air. The golden void divine lightning was as thick as a water bucket, and just one bolt was enough to light up the entire heavens, as if it were the only bolt of paramount lightning between heaven and earth. Time decay. The heavenly time God extended a hand toward the divine lightning, and a golden ball of light appeared in her palm, which exuded an ancient might as well as an indescribable sense of sorrow. The golden void divine lightning pierced into the golden ball of light. It was also in that instant that the golden void divine lightning seemed to have experienced countless years within the golden ball of light, and its power became weaker and weaker. Even the tiniest particle had a period of decay and annihilation. The heavenly time god had created a space to rapidly decay the golden void divine lightning. And Lin's expression shifted drastically, and he immediately unleashed all of the power of his power of lightning in an attempt to break through the heavenly time god's defenses. Break through, and Lin let loose an almighty roar as his golden void lightning ring quickly revolved. His power of lightning was imbued with paramount power of laws as it surged toward the heavenly time god's ball of light. Finally, the golden void divine lightning pierced through the time decay ball of light at Lin's behest. However, the golden void divine lightning had already shrunk from the size of a water bucket to the size of a mudfish crack. Boom! The golden void divine lightning exploded in the heavenly time god's hand, and her palm cracked slightly. The heavenly time god cocked her head to the side, and a beautiful smile appeared on her flawless features. Time reversal. A buzzing sound erupted. Her hand was instantly restored to its original state, and Lin almost threw up a mouthful of blood upon seeing this. Was this necessary? Was this King necessary? If she had used the time reversal technique just a little later, the wound would have healed by itself. Even so, why did she still want to use the time reversal technique? Did she really have to let him know that she could use the time reversal technique as she pleased? And Lin was completely flabbergasted upon seeing this. He was clearly risking his life, but why was his opponent's reaction so casual? It was also at this moment that the heavenly time god's 100-year sword suddenly changed direction and pounced toward Lin from behind. Again, Lin's expression shifted, and he was just about to unleash a lightning technique to escape. At this moment, something unexpected occurred. The river of time that stretched across the sky suddenly split and condensed into 10 golden flying swords. And Lin could sense the passage of time within the flying sword. It was extremely fearsome, and it was imbued with an indescribable power of time. There are 10 10-year swords? And Lin was astonished. Could a technique be split up like this? The 100-year sword isn't fast enough, so you'll have a chance to evade. What if it splits up into 10 10-year swords and attacks you at the same time? The heavenly time god waved a hand through the air. The golden flying swords flew toward Lin at an incredible speed. In the sky above, 10 golden sword projections instantly pierced through space. Looking up from below, one could only see a series of golden sword projections in the sky. As for the swords themselves, none of the snow maidens or the celestial arch or the great empress were able to see them, as they were simply too fast. Divine lightning revolved around Lin's body, and his speed rose to the maximum as he evaded the flying swords. Only lightning could keep up with the speed of light. I'll hide, 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 hide. Dodge, 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 dodge. And Lin was still slightly inferior in the end, and one of the 10 light swords still struck his body. Chapter 1438. The 10-year sword pierced through the golden lightning before puncturing Lin's body. The extremely peculiar power of time caused his body to age at a rapid rate. White hair appeared on his head, and his organs and bones were also beginning to decay. And Lin's body swayed slightly, and he threw up a mouthful of blood, as if he was struggling to hold on. The heavenly time god slowly drifted toward Lin with a cold expression. As long as I kill you, the wind and lightning will return to heaven and earth. Even without their sentience, heaven and earth will become more complete. And Lin panted heavily. His body was in an extremely poor state, and the divine halo above his head gradually dimmed before finally beginning to crumble. After using the powers of the heavenly gods repeatedly, his powers of the heavenly gods had finally been completely depleted. Without the powers of wind and lightning, there was no way he could contend with the heavenly time god. Little Xia, and Lin suddenly roared. Boom! An inky black domain instantly proliferated, enshrouding heaven and earth within a radius of over 50 kilometers. The heavenly time god was suddenly plunged into complete darkness, and she was unable to tell which direction was up or down. Her expression changed again as she stared at the scenes unfolding before her with an entranced expression. Evil sword technique, final technique, eternal night. And Lin unleashed a dark, formless sword strike. The power to end all things surged toward the heavenly time god. The evil-slaying sword possessed a special type of power. Even when Lin didn't possess any powers of the heavenly gods, it could still affect the heavenly wind god. Hence, Little Xia was Lin's final trump card. Within the divine tool domain, the heavenly time god's golden light was extremely dazzling. Her expression shifted slightly upon sensing the arrival of the eternal night, but there was still no hint of fear on her face. The heavenly time god stepped lightly into the darkness with her golden foot, and the power of time and space instantly transformed into a halo of light that proliferated into infinity and beyond like a ripple. Time decay. Regardless of whether it was the eternal night sword strike or the divine tool domain, both were instantly annihilated. It was as if the night had been torn apart by the light. Heaven and earth reappeared. The heavenly time god could see that the evil-slaying sword in Lin's hand was still glowing with a peculiar black light. Her pupils contracted slightly, and she was just about to raise her hand. Bam! She was caught off guard. The heavenly time god's head exploded. The scene happened so suddenly that everyone jumped in fright. All of the snow maidens let loose cries of surprise before expressions of undisguised joy appeared on their faces. Some of them were blushing, while others were cheering loudly. And Lin, on the other hand, was frowning deeply. He had just used Vanquish the Heavens and Slay all evil's ultimate skill, annihilation. Even though the heavenly time god's head was about to explode, she felt like something was missing. Little Xia's power was able to wound or exhaust her opponent, but she was unable to destroy her opponent's core. She was like a weed that could grow again after being burned to ashes as expected. Even if his head exploded, a pleasant and emotionless voice rang out again. Time rewind. Time reversed. The light spots converged. As if rewinding, the exploded head began to reassemble itself. Both the Snow Maidens and the Celestial Arch were dumbstruck upon seeing this, and despair welled up in their hearts. Even if the Golden Snow Maiden was sliced in half and her head exploded, she wouldn't die even if she was severely wounded to this extent. She would be able to recover after a single time reversal. So what else could he do to kill her? What could he do? What else could he do to kill her? And Lin racked his brain for a solution, but he still couldn't come up with a solution. He was already at the end of the line. Was he going to run? And Lin recalled the promise he had made with Xiaolan. If he couldn't defeat her, he had to come back alive no matter what. He looked at the extremely powerful Golden Snow Maiden before him, and the thought of retreat gradually welled up in his heart. On the ground below, the Celestial Arch was dialing a voice transmission. Your Majesty, the situation is extremely urgent. The Heavenly Time God is here. If you don't come, and Lin might really die. The Celestial Arch spoke in a panicked voice. Nuwas Sai sounded from the other side of the voice transmission talisman. You know that I can't do anything in my current state. I only have one chance to attack the heavens. The celestial arch was a little reluctant to give up, but he knew that Nuwa was right. If Nuwa were to intervene now, her plan to mend the heavens would only fail. He gritted his teeth. I won't let Enlin die here, no matter what. Enlin is the war god of the celestial court, and I am the celestial arch. If you can't do anything, then I'll save him. The other side of the voice transmission talisman fell silent. Celestial arch. I hope you know what you're doing, Nuwa said with a serious expression. You can't even defeat the heavenly wind god. So how are you going to fight the heavenly time god? Our heaven-mending sect isn't researching how to fight the heavens. What we're researching is how to mend the flaws of the heavens. The celestial arch smiled. But I've already done my research. Nuwa, the celestial arch ended the voice transmission talisman and looked up into the sky. The heavenly time god had already used her time reversal technique to recover from all of her injuries. At this moment, even the snow maidens knew that Enlin was actually at a disadvantage. Even though Enlin had wounded her twice, she was able to recover both times. In contrast, Enlin's aura was beginning to wane after being struck twice by the 10-year sword, and his body was most likely also severely wounded. In terms of trump cards, Enlin had already used up all of his trump cards, so he didn't have any more trump cards up his sleeve. As for the heavenly time god, she was a completely unfathomable being. No one knew what her next attack was going to be. Even if she continued to use the 10-year sword, she would be able to wear Enlin down. The great empress looked up at the man standing proudly in the sky and took a deep breath before speaking in a clear voice. All snow maidens, attack the enemy and create an opportunity for sect leader Enlin. Tens of thousands of snow maiden powerful beings roared in unison as they formed a battle formation and launched an all-out attack toward the heavenly time god. Their enemies were extremely powerful, to the point where they were unimaginably powerful, but they could only pin their hopes on the man in the sky. Hence, all of them launched fearless attacks in order to buy even a sliver of an opportunity for Enlin. All of a sudden, a torrential downpour of ice blades and frosty cannons rocked heaven and earth. Countless ice spell techniques inundated the heavenly time god like a tidal wave. Enlin faltered slightly at the sight of the snow maidens shielding him. He didn't think that he would be able to receive reinforcements from almost all of the snow maidens in this dire situation. However, these attacks were clearly completely ineffective. The golden ball of light proliferated for 5 kilometers, and all of the spell techniques that entered the range of the ball of light were quickly dispelled, leaving no trace behind. The heavenly time god stood at the center of the ball of light with a cold expression on her face, completely unfazed by the snow maiden's attacks. Enlin knew that this was the power of time decay. Not only would normal attacks not be able to break through it, but even the power of the heavenly gods could be obliterated by this power of time decay. Enlin was already planning to run away, but his heart wavered at the sight of the snow maidens desperately trying to create an opportunity for him. Should he run or not? Chapter 1439. If he escaped, over 100 million snow maidens are going to die here. The heavenly time god would also become a huge threat to the human race. However, if he didn't escape, how was Enlin going to kill this heavenly god? Just as he was at his wit's end, a voice suddenly sounded in his mind. Enlin, I am the celestial arch. I plan to help you fight the heavenly time god. Enlin's heart jolted upon hearing this, and he immediately transmitted his voice. You want to help me? How are you going to help me? You have to realize that the heavenly time god's time reversal can make all of our efforts go to waste. The celestial Thearcha's voice sounded again. Can you wound the heavenly time god again? Enlin thought about it for a moment before gritting his teeth. If I fight with my life on the line, I can cripple her again. As long as you can incapacitate her in an extremely short amount of time. As long as I can get close to her, I have a way to kill her. The celestial arch replied. Enlin was shocked. Why didn't you tell me this earlier? Why are you waiting until I'm about to die? Is this more exciting? The celestial arch. No, it's because I need to analyze her power. Do you still remember when I fought the heavenly wind god? I have a special constitution that allows me to use the power of the heavens against it, but I was still inferior in the end. The reason for that was because my analysis wasn't complete enough. And Lin recalled that the Celestial Arch seemed to have blown up the Windwalker once. The Celestial Arch continued, I can also use the power of the heavens to fight the Heavenly Time God. With my experience from last time against the Heavenly Wind God, as well as my complete analysis, I am confident that I can suppress or even kill the Heavenly Time God. And Lin couldn't help but become excited upon hearing this, and his battle intent surged again. All right, I'll battle you again. Time reincarnation. The golden snow maiden tossed a golden ball into the sky, upon which it exploded. Golden light permeated heaven and earth before falling like arrows. Golden arrows instantly fell from the sky like torrential rain. Countless snow maidens were struck, and they wailed in anguish as their bodies quickly melted into puddles of snow. The snow maidens were born from the snow, and they were transformed from the snow. However, the golden arrow actually allowed them to return to their original state. It was like reincarnation. No one could defend themselves against the rain of golden swords. Even the return to Void Stage snow maidens were quickly reduced to a puddle of snow after being struck by the golden swords. Another instant kill. In the face of the Heavenly Time God, regardless of whether one was a Tao Body Stage Cultivator or a return to Void Stage Cultivator, they were all just ants. And Lin had only just concluded his conversation with the Celestial Arch, but tens of thousands of snow maidens had already perished. Only after battling the Heavenly Time God did the snow maidens truly realize just how terrifying she was. Their attacks couldn't even break through her defenses, but any of her attacks could insta-kill them. This was a power that could make people despair. If it weren't for the fact that the snow maidens knew that their savior, and Lin, was still alive, their morale would have collapsed a long time ago. Non-extreme Frost Sky Talisman. Mengji suddenly appeared beside the Heavenly Time God with a divine staff in her hand. She pointed her divine staff at the golden snow maidens, and there was an extremely dazzling and translucent divine symbol on the tip of the staff. The divine symbol continued to expand, and the power of extreme frost that permeated heaven and earth became more and more terrifying. It crashed down toward the Heavenly Time God with 9 layers of extremely powerful sealing power. The Heavenly Time God waved a hand casually, and a wisp of golden wind tore the 9 extreme frost sky talisman apart. Mengji's expression shifted drastically, and she hurriedly retreated, but her arm was still swept up by the golden wind. It was also at this moment that her delicate arm began to age at a rate discernible to the naked eye. A decisive expression appeared on Mengji's face as she materialized an ice sword and slashed it toward her own arm. Blood splattered through the air, and she was finally able to halt the aging process by severing her own arm. Right at this moment, the Snow Maiden Empress also charged toward the Heavenly Time God with a peculiar ice crystal in her hand. The crystal exuded a shimmering divine light and appeared to be extremely intricate and beautiful. This was the only divine tool of the Snow Maidens, the Frost Essence Spike. Once it struck an enemy, it would be able to inject the essential power of extreme frost into the enemy's body to seal them for eternity. Even Tao integration stage super mighty figures would not be able to escape this fate. The great Empress power of the divine Tao soared into the sky, encompassing the entire sky for 150 kilometers. In the extremely cold environment, she threw out the strange ice crystal in her hand. The ice crystal glowed with a colorful light, and all of its microscopic structures were constantly changing. It was analyzing its enemy's attributes in order to create the most suitable form to attack. Soon, the ice crystal began to shrink and elongate, like an extremely thin needle. Whoosh! The divine tool, the Frost Essence Ancestral Spike, stabbed toward the Heavenly Time God, leaving an extremely obscure trajectory in its wake. And Lin's eyes also opened at this moment, and his aura began to soar explosively. It was time for him to strike. The heavenly time god extended a translucent fingertip at the sight of the oncoming frost essence spike. 10-year shield. A small golden shield began to appear on her fingertip. Just like that, the frost essence ancestral spike pierced into the small shield, and its speed suddenly slowed down by 10 times, 100 times, 1,000 times, 10,000 times. The spike that had been like a bolt of lightning was now crawling like a turtle, and then it was crawling like a snail. Time flowed differently within the shield compared to the outside world. At the same time, objects that had entered the shield also experienced different phenomena as compared to the outside world. This interference and conflict had resulted in this peculiar change. At this moment, the heavenly time god pointed her other finger at the great empress. An extremely powerful sense of impending doom welled up in the great empress' heart. A death countdown suddenly appeared in her mind, for which an extremely terrifying aura of death exuded. Most importantly, there were only 10 seconds left on this countdown. 10, 9. The great empress knew that Enlin was completely unable to break the death countdown for her. She could only fight with her life on the line. Even if she had to die, she had to fight for the snow maidens. The great empress let loose a clear cry and unleashed a blood mystic technique to inject all of her power into the frost essence spike. Just as the heavenly time god was about to block the divine tool with her right hand and grant the great empress death with her left hand, a black light flashed in the distance. The heavenly time god focused her gaze, and a golden barrier materialized before her. However, her power was extremely violent and insane, and it instantly tore through the golden barrier. Die! Enlin roared with rage. In order to unleash this final technique, the vanquish the heavens and slay all evil annihilation technique, he had expended all of his power, including the power to escape. All or nothing. Bam! The heavenly time god's head was pulverized by the power of the evil slaying sword again. The great empress discovered that the countdown timer in her mind had also been shattered. This indicated that the heavenly time god's spell technique had been forcibly interrupted, and she was momentarily feeble. It was also at this moment that a celestial Dharch in an imperial robe with the heavens reflected in his eyes appeared before the heavenly time god, and he plunged his hand into the heavenly time god's chest. The heavenly time god's body was punctured by the celestial Thearch's hand. Punishment on behalf of the heavens. Sealing palm of heavenly fate. The celestial Thearch's eyes were completely emotionless, and it was as if the heavens were falling from the heavens. White vein patterns instantly spread over the heavenly time god's entire body. A burst of mighty power descended from the sky, pressing down upon the heavenly time god's body in a frenzy, as if it were a thorn in heaven and earth that had to be pulled out no matter what. The headless heavenly time god's body trembled violently as she struggled with all her might. However, the more she resisted, the more terrifying the sealing power became. Enlin was ecstatic. They were going to win this time. Chapter 1440. The heavenly time god's aura was becoming more and more feeble. It was quite clear that the celestial Thearch's seal was very effective. All of the snow maidens turned their eyes upon the celestial Dharch. They never imagined that the Sky Emperor, who had not made a move all this time, would be so stunning the moment he made a move. He practically decided the entire battle with a single blow. The heavenly time god was still struggling, but her struggles were completely ineffective, as if she were on her deathbed. The great empress was astonished. I knew that he could borrow the power of the heavens, but I didn't think that he would be able to do so. If a Tao integration stage super mighty figure were to unleash such a power, they would probably be completely obliterated. Meng Ji also sighed with emotion. What an impressive technique. The Lord of the Celestial Court really lives up to his reputation. Just this technique alone is not something that we can oppose. Not only was the heavenly time god's aura rapidly weakening, but even her body was quickly shrinking. When she returned to nothingness and her authority returned to the heavenly Tao, she was truly destroyed. And Lin suddenly wanted to land the killing blow. Wouldn't it be great if he could take back the power of time, not taking into account anything else. Just the power of time reversal alone would make him virtually unkillable. However, he still forcefully suppressed that thought. He had to think about the bigger picture. If he interfered and caused the celestial Thearch's seal to fail, then he would really be condemned for all eternity. Just as Enlin was contemplating this, the celestial Thearch's expression abruptly shifted. Crap, the power of time can't be returned to the heavenly Tao, the celestial Thearch exclaimed. Enlin was perplexed. Why can't it be returned? Her will is too strong, and I can't erase it, the celestial Thearch replied with a solemn expression. Enlin was enlightened. He had always felt that the heavenly time god was very human-like. She was very expressive and talkative, so it looked like she had a very powerful will. Then what do we do? Enlin asked. The great empress, Mengji, and the other snow maidens were also looking at the celestial Thearch with nervous expressions. The celestial Thearch heaved a forlorn sigh. I don't know. Enlin, the great empress, was he telling them to wait for their deaths? I can't kill her right now, and she can't break free from my seal for now. We're in a stalemate. However, if I can't find a way, she'll be able to regain her freedom when I run out of power. The celestial Thearch said with a despairing expression. Enlin was filled with exhaustion. He had finally given up the chance to escape and decided to fight to the death with the Sky Emperor. But in the end, he was defeated. Wait a minute. He suddenly remembered something. The celestial Thearch and the heavenly time god were locked in a stalemate, so he could take this opportunity to escape. Enlin was itching to make a move. An elated expression appeared on the celestial Thearch's face at the sight of the stirring Enlin. Enlin, have you come up with a good idea? If you do, then just do it. Don't worry about the consequences. I want to escape, Enlin said honestly. The celestial Thearch, Snow Empress. The atmosphere suddenly became awkward. I'm risking my life to kill the enemy, and you actually want to betray your teammate? The celestial Thearch felt like he was about to throw up a mouthful of blood. Should he praise Enlin for his true nature, or should he criticize Enlin for being a coward? Enlin thought about it for a moment. Even though his life was important, it really wasn't a good idea to betray the celestial Thearch. But what could he do? Enlin stepped forward, and his body flashed toward the heavenly time god. The heavenly time god's head was gone, but her body was still trembling and struggling. If it weren't for the fact that the celestial Thearch was still sealing her, she would most likely be able to reverse time before flexing in front of everyone again. Enlin paused momentarily before stabbing his sword into the heavenly time god's chest. That's what you get for flexing. The inky black sword blade pierced through the heavenly time god's body, and she shuddered violently, as if she was in a lot of pain. Enlin could sense that the wound was only on the surface, and he hadn't managed to inflict any damage to the core. Could it be that he had stabbed her in the wrong way? Enlin pulled out his evil-slaying sword before stabbing it into another part of the Golden Snow Maiden's body. Splat! The Golden Snow Maiden's body shuddered again, as if she was in a lot of pain. Enlin continued to thrust his sword into the Snow Maiden's body relentlessly. He stabbed the Snow Maiden over 100 times in the blink of an eye. Mr. Enlin, hurry up. I can't hold on much longer. The celestial Thearch's features were slightly pale as he gritted his teeth. Enlin's expression darkened. How was that considered slow? The point is that it's useless. As he spoke, he stabbed the Snow Maiden over 100 more times with his sword. The evil-slaying sword had a special suppressive effect against these heavenly Tao clones, so all of his attacks landed on the heavenly time god's body with unerring accuracy, but he just couldn't kill her. What do I do, little Xie? Enlin couldn't help but ask his sword spirit. A cold and tender voice sounded, I can't kill her. Your cultivation base is too low, and you won't be able to draw upon enough of my power. Enlin, so this was all because he was too weak? Enlin was feeling a little weary. Why was he the scapegoat? How about we get the celestial Thearch or the great empress to use you to slay the heavenly gods? Enlin asked. They don't even have the right to use my power, little Xie said with a disdainful expression. Enlin faltered slightly before suggesting, how about you do it yourself? I'm like a duckweed with nowhere to go. and I can't unleash my full power. At the end of the day, it's all because you're too weak, little Sierra replied in an indifferent voice. And Lin felt like he had been stabbed again, and he stabbed the Snow Maiden over 100 more times as he spoke. The Snow Maiden's intricate and flawless body was already riddled with holes. Her body trembled violently, and she seemed to be unable to maintain her stability as she began to crumble. Not only that, but even her golden divine halo was beginning to crack. Bam! The heavenly time god's body exploded into specks of light. This scene stunned everyone in the arena. "It's over," the great empress murmured. The celestial Dharch sensed for a while before an ecstatic expression appeared on his face. "This is great. And Lin, I can't sense her presence. We've won. We've won." And Lin looked at the empty space before him with a surprised expression. He then looked at the evil slaying sword with a smile. "Could it be that I'll be able to kill her if I accumulate enough damage?" Little Xie didn't say anything. She seemed to be thinking about something. The celestial Dharch heaved a sigh of relief. Even though he was very tired, a joyful smile appeared on his face. It was definitely a good thing that they were able to eliminate a threat to the human race. Splat! Blood suddenly splattered through the air. The celestial Thearcha's smile congealed on his face. A dazzling golden blade, radiance pierced through his chest. There were no living beings between heaven and earth. All that remained was a blade projection that had suddenly appeared in his chest. "Wheel of Time," an ethereal voice sounded in the sky. Specks of light converged, and the divine halo was reconstructed. A golden Snow Maiden reappeared between heaven and earth. It was the heavenly time god. She had been resurrected, completely unscathed. All of the Snow Maidens were in despair. And Lin also drew a sharp intake of breath upon seeing this. "Kacha!" A crisp sound rang out. The heavenly time god's reconstructed divine halo suddenly began to crack. Chapter 1441. The heavenly time god didn't seem to care about that small rift. Time reversal. His divine halo flashed with light, and Lin's eyes widened, and he was just about to yell at the heavenly time god for cheating when he discovered that the crack on his divine halo hadn't healed. The heavenly time god's brows furrowed slightly. Time reversal. Another burst of light flashed. The crack in the divine ring was still there. Time reversal. Buzz. Time reversal. Buzz. Turning back time. The heavenly time god's expression gradually crumbled, as if she had encountered something extremely infuriating and terrifying, and she was determined to seal that crack. The celestial Dharch took this opportunity to escape. His aura was extremely weak. It was as if the energy in his body had been sucked dry by the golden blade aura. However, he was still alive. Why is there a seam? My perfect body will not allow such a flaw to exist. The heavenly time god gritted her teeth and ignored even in Lin and the celestial Dharch. She was like an obsessive-compulsive patient as she continued to use time reversal techniques to repair her divine halo. And Lin and the celestial Dharch were both a little dumbstruck, wondering what the heavenly time god was up to. The celestial Dharch quickly calmed himself down, and he clasped a hand over the wound on his chest. The heavenly time god is in a very strange state, so the crack on her divine halo could very well be our breakthrough point. And Lin nodded in agreement. There's a possibility that her divine halo can't be repaired by reversing the flow of time. There's something special about her divine halo, and it's already damaged beyond repair. Another possibility is that her time reversal has failed, or her strength has weakened. They looked at each other and saw hope in each other's eyes. The heavenly time god was not invincible. She was also weakening. As long as we hold on, we can win. At this moment, a blinding light suddenly filled everyone's vision. And Lin and the celestial Thearcha's hearts skipped a beat as an aura of death enveloped their bodies. Following that, the Sky Emperor's chest was once again pierced by a slender hand, and his flesh was torn apart in an instant. Puff! The celestial Dharch spat out a mouthful of blood and hurriedly retreated in an attempt to shake off the enemy. Then a slap went straight for his head, as if wanting to smash his head into pieces. Fortunately, the celestial arch had an iron head and withstood this palm strike. However, his body was still smashed into the ground like a meteorite, creating a crater over 1,000 meters in diameter. Evil sword technique, second style, flash stab. And Lin instantly appeared before the heavenly time god with his evil slaying sword in hand before stabbing toward the divine halo above her head. Bang! An even faster speed, a pair of hands clamped down on the incoming blade. And Lin suddenly felt that his swords had encountered an extremely terrifying resistance, and he couldn't stab any further. He focused his gaze to discover that his evil-slaying sword had been intercepted by the heavenly time, god barehanded. To a sword immortal, this was an utter humiliation. You're still trying to stab my ring? You're still trying to stab my ring. It's clearly cracked, it's clearly flawed, and it's no longer perfect. So why aren't you letting it go? The heavenly time god roared with rage. And Lin looked at the heavenly time god, who had already lost irrationality, and he was unable to muster up any joy. He had a feeling that this golden snow maiden was several times more terrifying than before. A cruel smile suddenly appeared on the golden snow maiden's face. Before you die, I'm going to torture you, just like how you tortured me. I remember that you've already stabbed me 300 times, so I have to pay you back in kind, and Lin's heart jolted with shock. He didn't think that the heavenly time god would hold such a grudge. The golden snow maiden's smile crumbled as she continued. Hence, I'm going to stab you 30,000 times. And Lin's eyes widened with incredulity as he stared at the golden snow maiden. What the F***CK? I stabbed you 300 times, so you're paying me back in kind? Shouldn't you be stabbing me 300 times instead? What kind of tit for tat was this? Just as he was in shock, a golden light flashed from the heavenly time god's eyes, and a sharp pain erupted from 100 different parts of Lin's body at the same time. Blood splattered through the air, instantly staining his white Taoist robe. 100 bloody holes riddled his chest, abdomen, and limbs. Not only was he suffering from the excruciating pain of his flesh being torn apart, but even his bones felt like they had been pulverized. And Lin was instantly covered in blood, and he couldn't help but let loose a cry. The heavenly time god had made Lin experience extreme physical pain, and Lin's only thought at this moment was to run. However, before he had a chance to do anything, a golden cage began to ensnare him. That's the first strike. The heavenly time god spoke in an indifferent voice. And Lin drew a sharp intake of breath, and his mind was a little befuddled. The first strike? You stabbed me 100 F***king holes, and that was only one strike? So the heavenly time god's 30,000 strikes were actually 3 million strikes? And Lin was in despair. He had only stabbed the heavenly god 300 times, but her vengeance was far too intense. Couldn't she show some mercy? Was she a demon? No, he shouldn't have been able to last until 3 million strikes. After all, he was almost completely crippled by the heavenly time god strike. Time reversal. The golden snow maiden suddenly said, Lin. A golden light enshrouded Lin, and a peculiar power healed all of his injuries, returning him to the state he had been in before the heavenly time god strike. Even though he had recovered, the pain and exhaustion from being stabbed 100 times still lingered in his mind. Then, a low voice that sounded like a devil's whisper could be heard. The second sword. Splat. Blood splattered through the air as Lin's blood-curdling cries intermingled. And Lin's body was punctured 100 times again. The excruciating pain almost made his brain convulse. Time reversal. The snow maiden continued. An expression of shock and horror appeared on Lin's face. That's right. If he was about to die like this, he could use time reversal. He could indeed be stabbed 3 million times, and he could even be tortured for eternity. However, he wasn't the type to just sit and wait for death. In the instant that he recovered from his injuries, he let loose an almighty roar as he slashed his evil-slaying sword toward the heavenly time god. You still want to struggle? The heavenly time god cackled maniacally as she grabbed onto the blade of the evil-slaying sword with one hand, while her other hand transformed into a sharp golden sword that instantly punctured another 100 holes into Enlin's body. The third strike. Enlin howled with anguish again. Time reversal. The heavenly time god used time reversal again. This time, Enlin switched from offense to defense as he unleashed his evading turtle technique. The fourth strike. The evading turtle technique was corroded and punctured by the power of time. Enlin was stabbed 100 times again, and indescribable pain and exhaustion surged through his entire body. The Golden Snow Maiden. Time reversal. Enlin's expression darkened. I want you to cry. I want you to shit. The Golden Snow Maiden remained expressionless. The fifth strike. Enlin howled with anguish. The Golden Snow Maiden. Time reversal. Rainbow lightning. Lightning surged from Enlin's fingertips. The Golden Snow Maiden dispelled the lightning with a palm. The sixth strike. Enlin howled with anguish. The Golden Snow Maiden. Time reversal. Enlin. Nuclear mountain quaking fist. The seventh strike. Time reversal. Sword burial. Extinguishing lotus immortal sword. The eighth strike. Enlin resisted with all his might, but the Golden Snow Maiden was able to easily nullify all of his spell techniques. On the contrary, Enlin was riddled with holes over and over again. Regenerate, torture, regenerate, torture, regenerate, endless loop. He could swear that this was the first time he had ever experienced such terrifying torture. There seemed to be no end to it, and pain was his only source of existence. Enlin was still resisting, but he knew that if things continued like this, he would go insane sooner or later. Chapter 1442. Millions of snow maidens on the ground below witnessed this extremely tragic scene. Some of them couldn't bear to watch. Some of them prayed to the ice matriarch, and some of them unleashed spell techniques in a frenzy to attack the heavenly time god, even though they knew that doing so could very well spell death for them. However, the heavenly time god seemed to be doing something extremely important and didn't have the time to deal with them. All she did was set up a golden barrier, and she was already invincible. After that, she continued to torture Enlin within the barrier. Enlin, the celestial of the arch, crawled up from the ground with great difficulty and threw up another mouthful of blood. The heavenly time god had punctured his chest, and even his head had almost exploded, but he knew that the pain he was experiencing right now was not even 1% of what Enlin was experiencing. The heavenly time god had unleashed her power of the heavenly gods, so there was no way she could break through this barrier in a short time. Analyze. The celestial of the arch stared at the heavenly time god's golden barrier as countless streams of information flashed through his eyes. He could only hope that Enlin would be able to last until he finished analyzing the barrier. Only then would they have a chance at survival. Ice Matriarch, what are you doing? Mengji grabbed onto Shangwan with a tense expression on her face. I'm going to use the power of the Ice Matriarch, Shangwan said as she held onto the Ice Matriarch's heart. Mengji's expression shifted again as she roared. Are you insane? Your body can't handle the Ice Matriarch's power right now. You'll die if you use it by force. Shangwan turned to Mengji with a resolute smile on her face. Enlin is here to save us. Are you going to stand by and watch him be tortured to death? Mengji opened her mouth, but she didn't know what to say. If we can obtain a power that transcends beyond the Tao integration stage in an instant, there might still be some hope. Shangwan took a deep breath as she tightened her grip on the Ice Matriarch's heart. Within the golden barrier. Time reversal. A peculiar power enshrouded the bloodied Enlin, and his body instantly recovered to its original state. Enlin's mouth gaped open, and his entire body convulsed uncontrollably. His body had recovered, and he wasn't going to die. However, the torturous pain still lingered in his mind, stacking on top of each other, causing him to sink into extreme terror and trauma. 18th strike. The heavenly time god announced with a cruel smile. Enlin felt despair. This was only the 18th sword strike. If the heavenly time god unleashed all 30,000 sword strikes, he really would go insane. He didn't think that there would be such a vengeful enemy in this world. The heavenly time god was the embodiment of a heavenly god, so why couldn't she have some dignity and magnanimity? Right at this moment, the heavenly time god's 18th sword strike had already fallen, and Lin suddenly remembered that he hadn't even started to resist before this sword strike. Every time he resisted, it was a kind of attitude. It represented his unyielding spirit, even in death. No matter what, I will fight you. This was a battle, not a simple abuse. However, the heavenly time god was simply too fast, and he didn't have time to cast a spell. Forget it, I'll just poke him with my finger. As he spoke, and Lin stretched out his finger and thought to himself, I'll poke you to death. At this moment, the system suddenly flashed. The move that had been dull all this time suddenly glowed with color. Perhaps it was because of your strong will to poke me, or perhaps it was because of your roar of unwillingness after being tortured thousands of times by the authority, which awakened a certain technique that had been dormant. In an instant, heaven and earth fell silent. The heavenly time god experienced time slowing down for the first time. She could see an index finger approaching her relentlessly. The index finger was covered in a dazzling golden divine light, as if it were a golden finger. It wasn't coming toward her very quickly, but she felt as if there was no way to evade it. It was as if this finger was the only thing in this entire world, and it could puncture the heavens with a single flick of its finger. The heavenly time god immediately switched from offense to defense. Time Decay, a golden ball of light imbued with the power of time, appeared before her. However, the finger tore through the ball of light in an extremely violent manner before flying toward the heavenly time god with killing intent. Upon initial mastery, it could annihilate all things, and upon phenomenal mastery, it could puncture space, pierce through time, and pulverize the great Tao. Finger of the heavenly Tao, the technique that had been dormant for many years and deemed unfit for use by the system, suddenly reappeared in this world. And Lin also came to a realization in that instant, and he unleashed the finger of the heavenly Tao without holding back. Furthermore, he unleashed it with his full power. The finger fell. Boom! The sky was instantly sliced in half by the power of the golden finger. The clouds dissipated, and the unstoppable power of the golden finger tore through the air like a surging heavenly river. The tip of the finger fell upon the heavenly time god's forehead. The heavenly time god's blood-curdling cries erupted throughout heaven and earth, as if she was in excruciating pain. All of the snow maidens could see the finger piercing through heaven and earth. It was so mighty and unstoppable, striking all of them with the urge to submit to it. If it were aimed at the heavens, perhaps it would even puncture a hole in the heavens. Is this sect leader and Lin's technique? So powerful. What kind of power is this? There seems to be no end in sight to this finger. I'm scared that he'll accidentally destroy this world. Can he win? Sect leader and Lin's attack can even sink an entire continent. How is that enemy going to defend herself against it? She'll definitely be reduced to ashes. All of the snow maidens discussed spiritedly among themselves. The power of Lin's finger of the heavenly Tao had been completely unleashed. The heavenly time god let loose a blood-curdling wail as a hole was punctured in her forehead. Then her entire body began to crack open and crumble. In the end, her entire body was reduced to ashes by the power of the finger. The golden light in the heavens dissipated, and Lin was the only one left in the sky. As for the heavenly time god, she had already been reduced to ashes. Heaven and earth suddenly fell silent. What followed was a tsunami of cheers. Ah, sect leader and Lin is so cool. Ah, we finally won. Thank you, sect leader and Lin. That finger is way too terrifying. What kind of technique is that? As expected of the war god of the celestial court. And Lin is the best. I love you. Some of the snow maidens had completely let go of their pride as they yelled at the man in the sky. All of the snow maidens were either whooping with joy or shedding tears of joy. This battle had not been easy to win, just as all of the snow maidens were cheering with excitement. A man in a flowing white, robe suddenly expanded, and his skin was showing signs of cracking. Look, sect leader Enlin doesn't seem to be in a good state. What's going on with him? Why isn't he moving? His body seems to be expanding. Am I hallucinating? Just as all of the snow maidens were discussing spiritedly among themselves. Bam! Enlin exploded again, right before everyone's eyes. Boundless blood mist erupted from his body. A thick blood mist enshrouded the entire space like a blooming red flower. Chapter 1443. Enlin's self-detonation gave countless snow maidens a massive fright. The Great Empress reacted the quickest, and she instantly appeared before Enlin before unleashing an ice seal spell technique to freeze his injuries before cradling him in her arms. Enlin, are you all right? What happened? The Great Empress asked in a concerned voice. Enlin opened his exhausted eyes. His powerful body of the war god was able to keep him from fainting on the spot, but he was completely drained of all energy. I'm all right. I won't die. It's just a side effect of using a spell technique. He spoke in a feeble voice as he cursed the system in his heart for being so heartless. He had finally managed to unleash the finger of the heavenly Tao, but it had to self-detonate again. Did it have to be such a bully? He really couldn't afford to unleash the finger of the heavenly Tao again. He was lucky last time as Chong, he had stepped in to save him. This time, it was all thanks to his thick skin that he was still breathing. Just as Enlin was grumbling incessantly to himself, the Great Empress brought out the only regenerative immortal pill she had left from her storage ring before placing it into Enlin's mouth with her slender, translucent hand. A burst of cool energy began to flow through his entire body, quickly healing his injuries. The immortal pill was most likely of a very high rank, and its power was fully unleashed by the evergreen technique. All of his injuries were healing at a rate discernible to the naked eye. Enlin was struck by a sense of comfort. Only then did he realize that he was being carried by the Great Empress. Her arms were wrapped around his waist, and his back was pressed tightly against the Great Empress's body. There was a soft and bouncy sensation on his back. The Great Empress slowly descended to the ground with him in her arms. In the wind, in the snow, in the Great Empress's arms. At this moment, he felt like he was in a dream. The contrast was too great. It was as if he had suddenly gone from a hell of endless torture to a paradise on earth. The celestial Arch, Mengji, and Shangwan quickly flew over to assess his injuries. Mr. Enlin, are you all right? My God, why did you suddenly self-detonate? Everyone asked with concern and comfort. Enlin didn't want to talk and just wanted to lie quietly in the Empress's arms. Enlin, I recall that you have a coffin with you. Hurry up and lie down in the coffin to recuperate, the celestial Arch said with a concerned expression. Enlin rolled his eyes and pulled out the coffin from his storage ring. He lifted the lid of the coffin and was about to lie inside. Suddenly, he saw a golden light flickering in front of him. His pupils shrank slightly, and even his heartbeat slowed by half a beat. He knew that the nightmarish voice rang out again. Time roulette. Following the sound of the wheel turning, ka ka ka, the light spots converged. Time was like a surging river, vast and distant, flowing without end. A unique aura spread throughout the world. Everyone stared at the spot where the light spots converged, and for a moment, they were so nervous that they forgot to breathe. For some reason, they suddenly had a terrifying conjecture. Motes of light converged to reveal a slim and slender figure, exquisite and perfect features, long golden hair that flowed like a waterfall, and a divine halo that exuded a supreme might. The heavenly time god had reappeared. The conjecture that they were most worried about had finally come true. Almost everyone who saw this scene forgot to breathe. Enlin's expression was filled with despair. His body, which had only just recovered, was throbbing with pain again. Even the finger of the heavenly Tao couldn't kill her. So what else could he do? In his current condition, he wouldn't even be able to unleash the first fist technique, let alone the finger of the heavenly Tao again. The heavenly time god appeared before everyone again, as she glowered at Enlin with a pair of golden eyes, as if there was an irreconcilable vendetta between her and Enlin. Kacha! The crisp sound of something cracking suddenly erupted. The divine halo above her head cracked again. There were 2 more cracks on the divine halo than before, so there were now a total of 3 cracks on the divine halo. And Lin didn't know how much the heavenly time god would be affected by the appearance of 3 cracks on the divine halo, but he knew that this was definitely going to be a massive blow to him. My halo, why did you crack again? The heavenly time god's hands trembled slightly as she stroked the divine halo above her head with an expression of shock and grief on her face. The title of heavenly time god gave Lin a sense of discomfort. All of you must die. This is unforgivable. I'm going to torture all of you for countless years. The golden snow maiden roared as the divine halo above her head lit up with a scintillating light. At the same time, she gripped the air with one hand. A golden pillar of light descended from the heavens before converging in her hand. The heavenly time god gripped the pillar of light, and it was as if she were holding a heaven-piercing stone pillar that was exuding an eternal and indestructible aura. 1,000-year sword. The golden snow maiden flicked her wrist, and a golden pillar of light fell from the sky, covering countless kilometers. Everything on the ground below was within the range of the golden pillar of light. I'm going to trap all of you in my time for all eternity and make you suffer eternal torture and refinement. Only then will I be able to alleviate my hatred for my halo cracking. It was a pillar of light, but it was also a sharp sword with an unstoppable sharpness. Regardless of whether it was the Celestial, the Arch, or all of the Snow Maidens, all of them were struck by a sense of crisis as they stared at the massive pillar of light falling from the sky. Are we going to die here? Mengji murmured. Lin was in despair. No, we're not going to die. Didn't she say that she was going to trap us in her time and make us suffer eternal torture and refinement? Lin did not doubt the heavenly time god's words at all. She had told him that she was going to slice Lin 30,000 times, and she really dared to do that. Boom! The pillar of light fell and engulfed Lin, the Celestial, the Arch, and millions of snow maidens. After the light dissipated, only the heavenly time god remained standing in midair. The ground below was completely empty. There were no living creatures at all. It was completely silent. The heavenly time god's smile had completely crumbled. Finally, I can finally make you sinners who destroyed my rings experience the most terrifying pain in this world. My 1,000-year sword is imbued with the boundless power of time. They have created a cycle of life and death that can trap all living beings in an endless cycle of time. Come, let's begin cycle 1. The heavenly time god's eyes flashed, and her consciousness descended into the sea of time. Everything was deathly silent and dark. A gentle voice suddenly sounded beside his ear. Lin, Lin struggled to open his eyes and was greeted by the sight of an exquisitely beautiful woman in a jade dress looking at him, with concern etched on her face. There was a pair of warm, jade-like hands pressed tightly against his face. You're finally awake. Are you feeling better? A vibrant smile appeared on the woman's face. Xiaolan, and Lin rose to his feet and pounced toward her like a tiger before wrapping his arms around her. You're still injured, so you need a rest. Su Xiaolan struggled for a moment, and Lin could indeed feel that his body was very feeble, so he let go with a blank expression. Why am I here? Why am I back? Wasn't he battling the heavenly time god? Why was he in Su Xiaolan's room after waking up? He felt like his surroundings were very realistic, not like he was in a dream. The Celestial, the Arch, saved you. Su Xiaolan brought over a bowl of medicine with a smile. Lin, it's time to take your medicine.